Chapter 1338. Interesting. When Chung Gungxing said the same words, they sounded relaxed and playful. 14 still followed behind him silently without saying a word. Li Longchuan walked beside him and asked, "Who is Chongxian referring to?" Chung Gungxing smiled faintly. Interesting. Li Longchuan shook his head and sighed. I really didn't expect Gaozhe to do this. We usually drink and eat together. He doesn't seem like someone who doesn't know his limit. You haven't seen him in a long time. You don't know what kind of life he's living in Jing High Commandery. Of course, he's arrogant now that he's the number 2. After the sun-destroying battle, Chongxian and Chu Liang gave the Gao family the position of town commissioner. Therefore, the two families had a relationship. Chung Gungxing also interacted with Gaozhe in this way. This should be one of his operations. But when he talked about the out-of-control Gaozhe, his tone was still relaxed. Showing different things in different positions. This is what most people are like. How many people are as stupid as Jiang Qingyang? Ha 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 ha. Li Longchuan laughed. I can't guarantee that Jiang Wang can't hear this. Ha, I'm afraid of him. Chung Gungxing said stubbornly. Then he changed the topic. This Lin Xian is not simple. Yes. Li Longchuan's expression became serious. His strength has improved a lot since he was at the river viewing platform. Li Longchuan had the candle glimmer. His judgment of Lin Xian's strength was very accurate. But this was not what Chung Gungxing wanted to talk about. He shook his head. It's not just strength. That's true. Li Longchuan's handsome eyes flickered. This person was able to quickly determine that Gaozhe's relationship with Jiang Wang was not strong after Gaozhe said a few words, and that there was a rift between him and us. He also decisively stepped on Gaozhe to establish his authority, sweeping away the pressure that had been suppressing him since he entered Star Moon Plain. His astuteness and decisiveness are extraordinary. He is not just outstanding in strength. Ha, it's easy to talk to you, Chung Gungxing said with a smile. It's much easier than talking to Jiang Wang. Li Longchuan also laughed. It feels good to step on people behind their backs, but it won't be easy to seal my mouth. Lin Xian, this person. Chung Gungxing very naturally brought the topic back. Praising Jiang Wang without any hesitation, not only can you get rid of your arrogant reputation, but you can also reduce your own sense of threat. This is for self-control. Seizing the opportunity to show off his ability and go against Gaozhe was bold and confident. In the current situation of Xingyue Plain, he is still able to maintain his prestige and not lose his national dignity. This person already has the ability to maintain integrity. When envoys travel under orders, they must carry talismans as proof. Those who can represent the emperor as an envoy to other countries must be first-rate talent. Internally, they must not disobey the emperor's orders. Externally, they must not lose their national dignity. Chung Gungxing's words were already extremely high praise. Li Longchuan only nodded. He did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. Lin Xian's performance was worthy of such praise. Ronggua had secretly nurtured Tianjiao for many years, hoping to make a name for himself in the Battle of the Yellow River. In the end, he did not even make it into the main competition. Now, he was forced to send the country's #1 envoy, Tianjiao, to the battlefield. It was impossible for him not to be despised from the start to the end. Lin Xian took the opportunity of Gaozhe's provocation to change his image in one fell swoop. If it were anyone else, under the same conditions, it would be difficult to do better. Perhaps, Li Longchuan thought. If it was Chung Gungxing who was in a different position, Gaozhe's behavior today was probably planned in advance, and he would probably be able to perform better. If it was Jiang Wang who was in a different position, then Ronggua would have already succeeded in the Battle of the Yellow River. Looking at it this way, although Lin Xian was a talent, he still had a long way to go. I can only wonder now. Chung Gungxing looked into the distance. What did Jiang Wang do to make a talent like Lin Xian praise him so much? When the war started, the great illusionary land was blocked, so he could not get in touch with Jiang Wang in time. He did not know about Jiang Wang's recent situation. Before Lin Xian spoke today, he thought that Jiang Wang was still hiding somewhere to cultivate. Thinking about it, Li Longchuan also looked into the distance. It's time for another storm. Ever since Jiang Wang received the mission to investigate Huang Yichang's case, he had been in a lot of trouble. From Qi to Jing, from betraying the country, to committing adultery, from Pingdeng to Zhao Xianyang. It could be said that every step he took was frightening. In the end, he stirred up a storm in the world. Even the battle in Xingyue Plain was caused by his disappearance. As Jiang Wang's friend and a member of the Shermanli family, the news of Jiang Wang's safety was not a secret to him. He was also very curious about what Jiang Wang had done to make Lin Xian praise him so much. He only hated that he was on the battlefield and could not ask him immediately. 1,000 kinds of people had 1,000 kinds of thoughts. Jiang Wang did not know how people in Xingyue Plain were talking about him. After bidding farewell to Yu Beidu and leaving the Broken Soul Gorge alone, he stood at the entrance of the gorge, listening to the wind passing through the gorge behind him. In the end, he restrained himself. The experience of narrowly escaping death was not wonderful, and the feeling of being powerless in the situation was also very uncomfortable. Looking back at the Broken Soul Gorge, he raised his index finger. The smoke condensed into the shape of green grass, leaving the tip of his finger and swaying gently. The secret art of remembrance, which Yu Beidu helped to deduce, was called, if there is a fight, the soul will detect it. If it is not stopped within 3 days, it will be chased for thousands of miles. It was based on the knowledge of the target at the soul level. It was engraved and formed a connection at the soul level, thus completing the tracking. From a practical point of view, it was to engrave the characteristics of the target's soul at the soul level, thus forming a connection similar to the connection between the child body and the mother body. From this point of view, the name of this art was still remembrance, which was very appropriate. He used this art at this time, of course, to track down the unveiled Devilman. Killing 3 of the 4 Devilmen was still not good enough. As the saying goes, one must eliminate all evil. Since his body had completely recovered, there was no harm in killing him again. The sublimation of the secret art of remembrance was already after Yan Zi escape. But before she escaped, Jiang Wang had already prepared for a soul fight. His eye of Qianyang had been opened, so he had a clearer understanding of her soul. It was not difficult to describe it again at this moment. The only things to consider were time and distance. Because everyone's soul was constantly changing, and the connection at the soul level was not stable, it could only last for 3 days at most, and there was a certain distance limit. At present, the distance limit depended on the strength of Jiang Wang's soul. The remembrance grass appeared at the tip of his finger. The veins on the grass moved, faintly forming the shadow of a woman. If one did not look carefully, one would not be able to see it. But it was the soul imprint that condensed the characteristics of the unveiled Devilman's soul. The first step of remembrance was completed. The next step was to see the connection between it and the imitated soul. If it took too long, it would not succeed. If the distance was too far, it would not succeed. The grass swayed for a while, then fell down gently, pointing to the southeast. The grass lowered its head, as if in remembrance. Those who go can be chased, and those who come can be reached. Jiang Wang had already risen, flying through the clouds into the distance. Only the sound of his green robe fluttering was left, as if echoing the cold wind of the Broken Soul Gorge that had not changed for thousands of years. Chapter 1339. On the 27th day of the 9th month in the 3919th year of the Tao calendar, in the southeastern region, at Tianxing Cliff. This cliff faced Changqi to the north, Dexia to the west, Taishui to the south, and Hanhai to the east. Very few outsiders came to this high shore. 3 majestic Dharma palaces stood on top of this cliff. As usual, the waves hit the cliff and the mountain winds hit the ceremonial stone. The so-called ceremonial stone was a type of stone unique to Tianqing Cliff. It was scattered all over the cliff and could be seen everywhere. It had all kinds of different appearances, but its base was always square. The biggest difference between it and ordinary stones was that every time the wind hit it, this stone would make a uniform sound, like a person shouting "Wei." People believed that it maintained the prestige of Tianqing Cliff, so it was named the ceremonial stone. It was also called the prestige stone. A white-haired old man wearing an eye patch descended from the sky and walked along the mountain path. He gave up flying and walked up the wide and orderly mountain path. As soon as he raised his head, he saw a towering stone stele. No clouds dared to circle it. The words on the stone stele were like iron and silver hook. Each stroke was clear and deep, as if the marks were not on the stone stele, but in the world. The words read, "Heaven punishes, earth accepts the law, man must abide by the rules." These 13 words stood between heaven and earth from top to bottom, like a golden jade seal, with an untouchable prestige. It represented the spirit of the law, the will of the Sanqing Palace since ancient times. Just as the one-eyed old man raised his head to look at the stone stele, a methodical, knife-like voice seemed to fall from the 9 heavens. "Taoist you! Why have you come? The current world's top physiognomist, the current world's highest achievement in divination, the current world's #1 Taoist in divination," Beidou still maintained his posture of looking at the stone stele and asked, "May I ask Taoist Su Kuei, what is the law?" In the surging mountain wind, the monotonous voice replied, "Fair." Beidou asked, "There are unjust, and those who violate the rules. Who should I ask?" The voice asked, "Involving a person? A land? A sect? A country?" Beidou grinned, "Involving the strongest country in the world, the #1 inner palace since ancient times." The voice was silent for a while. "Please go to the heavenly palace." He then added, "Zhenren, you should know the rules. Zhenren Lu Kuei, you don't seem like someone who likes to talk nonsense." Beidou shook his head, restrained his smile, and said seriously, "If there is any falsehood, heaven and earth can punish you." Boom, boom, boom. Above the high cliff, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. At the side of the Aeon Law stele, a door suddenly opened. It was an ancient and heavy iron door. On the door, there were neat horizontal and vertical lines that divided the door into countless squares of equal size. Mottled by the passage of time was reflected on it, and the radiance of the sun and moon circulated within it. The moment it opened, even someone as strong as Beidou instantly bent over. When the door appeared, he felt as if he had been rejected by the entire world. When the door opened, he was once again absorbed into the world. However, this heaven and earth was stricter and more orderly. Beidou only took a glance before walking in. Chum Gungxing soon found out what Jiang Wang had done. When Lianmu finally understood why Lin Xian was able to say that he was looking up to the peak, including Li Longchuan, Yan Fu, and Gao Zhu, including the entire Xingyue Plains battlefield, no, the entire eastern region, the entire world, all the places where human cultivators existed were shaken by the name of a young Tianjiao. His name was Jiang Wang, because on the 27th day of the 9th month of the 3919th year of the Taoist calendar, the current world's top physiognomist, Beidou, left the soul-breaking gorge in the south and personally went to the Sanqing Palace, the holy land of legalism. He announced to the world in front of the heavenly palace that Jiang Wang was not a person who was in cahoots with demons and was not guilty of being in cahoots with demons. He took out ironclad evidence and used the truth to tell the world. Jiang Wang fought 1 against 4 in the soul-breaking gorge, killed the 3 great demons, cut meat and behead her, and forced the unmasked Devilman to escape. He broke the legendary record of the Elder of the Heavenly Mansion and became the #1 inner mansion in history. After that, he bravely helped Ubedu with his injuries and killed the divination Devilman, who was ranked second among the 9 great demons. Most importantly, Jiang Wang also helped him seal the ancient blood demon, preventing the inheritance of the blood demon technique of annihilation. No demon would treat the blood demon technique of annihilation in such a way. No demon spy would treat the blood demon technique of annihilation in such a way. This was because a demonic book of this level was a true sacred item of the demon race. It ran through the long river of history and served the continuation of its inheritance. Any demon who defies it must die, regardless of the reason. And all of the above statements were approved by the Sanxing Palace. With Yu Beidu's appearance, the Sanxing Palace of Legalism as the witness, and the supreme demonic book, the blood demon technique of annihilation, Jiang Wang's name was cleansed. Furthermore, the Jing Kingdom's Mirror World stage secretly sent 4 outer building stage cultivators to capture Jiang Wang. They wanted to settle the case on Mount Yujing quietly. After being killed by Jiang Wang, they directly declared him guilty of being in cahoots with demons and issued a warrant for his arrest. They sent out the Shunlin realm cultivator, Zhao Xianyang of Tianjiao. All of these actions became the biggest scandal of the Mirror World stage of the Jing Kingdom in the past 1,000 years. Thus, it attracted the attention of the world. Everyone, whether active or passive, was discussing the same question: did the Jing Kingdom have the right to condemn Tianjiao? With the Qi Kingdom and the Mu Kingdom adding fuel to the fire, many influential people from all over the world began to ask questions. Even Jiang Wang, the famous leader of the Yellow River, who was born in the Qi Kingdom, could be casually arrested and tried in public. Was the era of the Jing Kingdom's dominance not over yet? In the 3,919 years of history of the world, was the justice pursued by all the countries just a joke? The justice pursued by the Tianjiao Conference of the Yellow River, the fair distribution advocated by the Gate of Demons, the countless efforts of all the countries and sages in the world, in the Jing Kingdom, the most powerful country in the world, they could arrest whoever they wanted and punish whoever they said was guilty? Could the sacred ancient demon slayer covenant be used as a weapon to suppress the prodigies of other countries? The world was in an uproar, but the Jing Kingdom maintained a rare silence, and did not make a sound. For those who held power and had their eyes on the world, using this opportunity to weaken the influence of the Mirror World stage and Mount Yujing, and to reconsider the power of the Jing Kingdom, was of course the most important. But for many people in the world, Jiang Wang broke the record of the Old Man of Tianfu, created a new legend, redefined the limits of Tianfu, and left his name in the history of cultivation. This was more shocking. The arrogance of the Jing Kingdom was not new, so there was nothing to be surprised about. The young and peerless Tianjiao, trudging through the mud, advancing bravely at a time when the world was no longer the same, and finally challenging history, becoming the #1 inner mansion in history, killing murderers, suppressing demonic arts. This was a heroic epic that made people scream. This was a living legend. For a time, it was sung by the world. Chapter 1340. When the Mirror Era platform announced that Jiang Wang was guilty of being in cahoots with demons, most of the Qi people were filled with indignation. Their Tianjiao had just broken free from the stigma of being a traitor, but now he was being accused of being in cahoots with demons. It was too unfair. The Jing Kingdom's intention to suppress the Tianjiao of Qi was obvious. Many people even felt that the accusation of being a traitor to Jiang Wang was pushed by the Jing Kingdom to force Jiang Wang out of Qi. Why should the world blame him? Because my hero is the enemy of my enemy. But there were also some rational Qi people who had a calm view. For example, the famous scholar Fengming, who wrote On Merits and Faults and almost nailed Jiang Wang's reputation to death, publicly declared, "Although the Jing Kingdom has been in power for a long time, it has never lost the righteousness of the human race. Since ancient times, it has made many contributions to slay demons and demons. Yonggenzuan is also the Tianjiao of the country. On the Riverview platform, only Do Zhao can rival him. His talent is not inferior to Jiang Qingyang. Why is the name of being in cahoots with demons untainted? Because of righteousness. As the saying goes, when mud and sand fall together, the river is still clear. When manure is piled up, one can smell the stench from 3 miles away. Since ancient times, there has never been a case of a sinner being innocent. Hell has no door, no involvement? Equal state, no involvement? Demons, no involvement? 3 times, no involvement in the manure pit, no one has ever heard of it. He also cited some examples of Tianjiao who were in cahoots with demons in the history of the Jing Kingdom to prove that the Jing Kingdom had always been fair and impartial when it came to matters of demons, not individuals. Then, in history, there were examples of Qin and Mu cultivators who were in cahoots with demons, but they were all captured and brought to Mount Yujing to be executed. There was never a case of Qin or Mu protesting against injustice. Those were all true cases of being in cahoots with demons. The Jing Kingdom's leadership of the demon-slaying alliance had been an ancient tradition for many years. They wouldn't and didn't need to break the rules for Jiang Wang. No matter how much of a genius Jiang Wang was, how could he compare to the world's youngest perfected person, Li Tiankai? Fengming advised his countrymen not to deceive themselves and others. Tianjiao, a mere inner mansion stage martial artist, might not be able to achieve anything in the future. What was there to be targeted by Jing country, the most powerful country in the world? He even said that he hoped that Jiang Qingyang would not run away and try to protect himself with public opinion. He should face the problem properly. He might still be able to turn things around if he was possessed for a moment. Being obsessed with the wrong things for the rest of your life is the same as cutting yourself off from the world. He also said that the Qi people were first and foremost human beings. He was loyal to the Qi Emperor and loved the Qi Emperor, but he was a human being first and had to stand on the side of the human race. Channeling demons was a problem that would shake the foundation of the human race. It was a major problem. He was very grateful to Jiang Wang for winning the honor for Qi, but he wouldn't ignore such a matter of principle. As the saying goes, merits and demerits cannot offset each other. For a moment, what flies don't bite seamless eggs? With so many dirty things mixed together, is Jiang Wang really not guilty? What if he was really innocent? He wouldn't have run away. Isn't it good to go to Mount Yujing for a public trial and have the world witness his innocence? What, relying on Qi's nurturing and gaining a bit of merit, he wants the country to protect him at all times. How can there be such a good thing? Can you even protect a demon spy? Discussions such as these caused a great uproar. It wasn't until Qi Ting issued a letter condemning the Jing country and publicly declared his position. He also unyieldingly sent Ji Zhaonan, Shi Mingjin, Wen Yanyu and others to assist Jiang Wang that these comments in the country temporarily stopped. Fengming also locked himself in his courtyard and announced that he was studying behind closed doors and was tired of worldly affairs. Many people felt that he was disappointed in reality. The undercurrent regarding Jiang Wang had never stopped. The Jing country had established its prestige for too long. Many times, the Jing country's announcement was the golden rule. In Qi, there had always been people complaining that pillars of the country like Shi Mingjin and Wen Yanyu should not run around for Jiang Wang, who could not be cleared of suspicion. For a god like Ji Zhaonan to come to Tianjiao, the right way to go was to make contributions after the Gate of 10,000 Demons. The war that started in Xingyue Plain afterwards was all Jiang Wang's responsibility. Until this day, the world's recognized top physiognomist, Yu Beidu, personally went to the Sanqing Palace to provide evidence. The Sanqing Palace also publicly declared their position, proving that Yu Beidu's words were not false. The Jing country's mirror world platform's propaganda of the so-called crime of being in cahoots with demons should not have been established from the beginning. What aura left behind in the demon's den, what strange cultivation progress, what evil spells, all of these were overturned in the matter of sealing the blood demon technique of annihilation. The Yellow River's leader, Jiang Wang, not only was not guilty of being in cahoots with demons, he was a demon slayer hero. As an inner house cultivator, he participated in the matter of sealing the demon technique. He could be said to have great wisdom and courage, and was worthy of praise and tears. It was easy to kill demons, but difficult to kill demon technique. Many Shunlin cultivators could not avoid the danger in the process. Even Yu Beidu, who was one of the strongest perfected beings in the world, failed repeatedly. Who could say that Jiang Wang was not brave enough? Once the root of the crime was cleared, the other problems were no longer a problem. Jiang Wang broke the record of the Elder of the Heaven Mansion, killed the outer house's human demon, and became the first inner house cultivator in history. The world was in an uproar, and the people of Qi were proud of him. This was a magnificent feat that was enough to carve a monument in the history of cultivation. Wang Yiwu broke the historical limit of the reaching heaven state, and even the military god Jiang Mingxiong praised him endlessly, saying that he had a successor. Jiang Wang had now created the history of the inner house cultivator, and his opponent was a legend like the Elder of the Heaven Mansion. How could the reaching heaven state's record compare to his? For a moment, the whole country was praising him. All the voices within the state of Qi that were trampling on and slandering Jiang Wang suddenly became silent. Those who swore that there was definitely something wrong with Jiang Wang closed their doors and pretended to be dead, as if they had never said anything. Those who did not have a name or a surname quietly slipped away. But those who had a name and a surname, and who had passionately guided public opinion, were not so easily let go. The famous scholar Fengming had a mansion with great scenery in the eastern suburbs. Someone poured ink into the lotus pond in the courtyard. The pond was black, and all the fish in the pond were dead. Someone left a message on the shore: "Mud can't stain water, but can ink?" In the courtyard of Linzi, someone poured feces on the door in the middle of the night. When people passed by, they covered their noses and laughed. So this is the smell from 3 miles away. The heir family members angrily went to the patrol office to report, asking to investigate the neighboring streets and alleys to find the person who poured feces on the door. The arrestor of the patrol office only replied, "There are so many people who hate you in the world, and they are more than 3 miles away from each other. The patrol office really can't investigate." For a moment, the word "smell from 3 miles away," Fengming, spread all over Linzi. When Jiang Wang became famous, he became famous at the Riverview Terrace. When his reputation was in tatters, it was so bad that the world knew about it. There were those who knew and those who didn't, but it was hard to avoid this name during this period of time. The Sanqing Palace had always been established by the law and never sided with any power in the world. The Zhe Palace and Judy Palace rarely appeared in the mortal world, and only the disciples of the Run Palace often traveled the world. They were different from the cultivators of other sections. They were either chivalrous or punishing evil. They were all righteous. No matter where the disciples of the Run Palace went, they would punish and punish according to the local laws. The laws of different places were different. For example, theft, according to the laws of Qi, was 10 times the punishment. According to the laws of Qin, it was 1 finger cut. For example, according to the laws of Chu Lui, the punishment was more than 5 years. According to the laws of Mu, it was horsetail removal. That was to tie the vital part to the horsetail and drag it away. There was once a foreign businessman with the surname Wu. He was lustful in the grasslands and was sent to be executed the next day. This case was recorded in the Mu nation's penal record. It was recorded that the weapon was too small and couldn't be tied to the horsetail. The executioner was impatient and waved his knife. It was said that the businessman with the surname Wu spent a lot of money to return to his country for a trial, but he failed. This case spread far and wide, and it was also a clear proof that the laws of different countries were different. The laws of different countries were originally derived from the scriptures. However, due to the different times and places, as well as the beliefs of different legalists, there were many differences. The disciples of the legalists were well versed in the laws of the world. They never violated the law and were usually dealt with by the local government. They were very popular in many countries, and it could even be said that they were the most popular scholars who traveled to study. They were often treated as a powerful addition to the local government officials. For those powerful countries that placed a lot of emphasis on the authority of the government, they were the most unwelcoming of the legalists who traveled to study. Of course, these countries often spared no effort in recruiting the talents of the legalists. At the end of the day, what they wanted was to take orders from their own hands. The rules were secondary. The Sanqing Palace respected the laws of different places. If they felt that the laws were inappropriate, they would only choose to send people to be officials and silently amend the laws. They would never directly interfere with the country through force. As a result, their reputation was very good. However, outside of the countries, there were parts that involved the human race as a whole. For example, the Yao race, the Devil race, the Sea race. The Sanqing Palace followed the scriptures. The matter of Jiang Wang colluding with the devil was something that the Sanqing Palace could ignore the laws of Jing country. In terms of credibility, the Sanqing Palace was far superior to the Mirror Era platform. Therefore, when the Sanqing Palace expressed their stance, the public opinion of Jing country's Mirror Era platform collapsed. Under such circumstances, Jing country was silent, but the world was not silent. Great Chu Huai Public House. A beautiful middle-aged woman with only a crescent hairpin in her hair slowly walked in the garden. Although her clothes were very simple, her bearing was natural and graceful. At this time, the garden was filled with the fragrance of flowers, and a tree shone in the sky. A handsome young man wearing a long blue robe was sitting alone in the pavilion, performing a spell. There was only one stone stool and one person. The water flowed around him, and pavilions could be faintly seen in the light. The waterside pavilion Dragon Palace was born and then extinguished, reflecting the person's brilliance. Little Guangshu, the woman said. Her voice was very gentle, as if it could heal all the wrinkles in the world. Zhuo Guangshu opened his eyes and looked at the woman through the water. Mother, what is it? She frowned slightly, unhappy that she was disturbed. It wasn't that the mother and son had a bad relationship, but he was obsessed with cultivation and only wanted to advance. Mother would come at least 5 times a month to persuade him to rest and play more. She always found excuses to disturb his cultivation. Today's fruit in the apricot garden, tomorrow's flowers in the fertile fields. At this age, he couldn't help but become impatient after a few times of persuasion. The beautiful middle-aged woman who walked into the garden was named Xiong Jingyu. She was a member of the imperial family of Great Chu and the younger sister of the current emperor of Chu. When she married into the Huai public house, it was a marriage that everyone in Great Chu envied. Later, after Zhuo Guangshu's father died in battle, the emperor of Chu felt sorry for his sister and advised her to marry into several influential families. However, she firmly refused and only said, it was difficult to follow the waves of a long river. She single-handedly raised her 2 sons and taught them personally. She said that she wanted to become a hero, and she did it. Her eldest son was very capable. He revived the Zhuo family's prestige and suppressed the younger generation of Great Chu until the Battle of the River Valley and the fall of Tianjiao. This strong and gentle woman's footsteps were very light. It was a habit that she had developed over the years. She was afraid that she would affect her children's cultivation. Seeing Zhuo Guangshu's impatient appearance, she didn't feel displeased. She only shook the jade token in her hand and smiled gently. I just got an interesting piece of news. It seems that you don't want to know? After all, she was his mother. He couldn't speak ill of her. Although Zhuguangshu had no interest in the interesting news from her mouth, and had long been tired of those lantern festivals and flower festivals, he couldn't say it out loud. He could only lower his eyes and explain in a good voice, "Mother, I want to cultivate." "Oh, so it's like that." Xiong Jingyu sighed. "That's true. You are a talent of great Chu, a grand young duke. Why would you care about the news of someone from Qi? Mother is bothering you." Zhuguangshu raised his eyes. But she had already put the jade token behind her back and walked out of the garden with her hands behind her back. She muttered in a low voice, "I don't know if the Jiang Wang you said last time will accompany you to the Mountain Sea territory and will stay at home for a while. Is this Jiang Wang?" "Mother," Zhuguangshu called softly. Xiong Jingyu tilted her head and turned around. Her beautiful eyes were full of smiles. "Who's calling me?" Zhuguangshu waved his hand and the water around him disappeared. He said obediently, "It's little Guangshu." Xiong Jingyu turned back with her hands behind her back. Her face showed a very exaggerated and worried expression. "Did Mother disturb your cultivation?" "No." Zhuguangshu quickly denied. "You really didn't?" "You really didn't." "Then I'm relieved." Xiong Jingyu patted her chest gently and made a relieved expression. "How can I be embarrassed to disturb the young duke's cultivation?" Zhuguangshu lowered his eyes and said embarrassedly, "Mother, oh." Xiong Jingyu chuckled softly. "Our little Guangshu knows to be shy now." "That, Mother." Zhuguangshu knew that he couldn't continue to chat with her. This woman could talk until tomorrow morning. He tilted his head and looked behind her. He pointed his finger and asked cutely, "What news did you bring for me?" Xiong Jingyu didn't continue to tease him. She just handed the jade token in her hand forward. "Here." Zhuguangshu stepped out of the pavilion and took the jade token that recorded the information in his hand. His mind flowed, and he already understood the information inside. He looked at his mother and his eyes became bright. "Is it true?" Xiong Jingyu smiled and said, "Can the news from Zhang Huatai be false?" Zhuguangshu smiled reservedly. "He's not bad. He's worthy of being someone who can fight with me." Jiang Wang and Zhuguangshu were friends in the great illusionary land. Xiong Jingyu naturally knew about this. Otherwise, she wouldn't have brought this news over in the first place. "That's fine." Xiong Jingyu smiled and looked at her son. She turned and walked out. "Mother won't disturb your cultivation. I don't want to annoy you." "Mother, don't say that," Zhuguangshu said sweetly from behind. "I'm not annoyed at all." Xiong Jingyu didn't turn back. She just waved her hand. "I've left some fengwu tea in your room. Remember to drink it when you go back." Her back gradually disappeared into the distance. This was the back that he was used to. When his mother walked away and the courtyard was empty, Zhuguangshu suddenly clenched his fist and jumped in place. "Hey! The first inner courtyard in history. Truly amazing." Xiong Jingyu, who had already walked out of the courtyard, couldn't help but smile again. Ever since, little Guangshu rarely had such a happy time. Chapter 1341. Jing Country, Longzhou County, General's Mansion. Today was the day Huang Sheli, the beloved daughter of the Yellow Dragon Guard and the second in the world, washed her hands in a golden basin. In the courtyard, there was a large basin made of pure gold. The pear wood frame was very stable on the ground. Two groups of soldiers stood on both sides of the courtyard, holding spears facing each other and wearing bright armor. They were the guards of honor. The healthy and valiant Huang Sheli stood valiantly in front of the golden basin, her yellow robe dragging on the ground. The basin was filled with sweet spring water, as clear as broken jade. Huang Sheli's hand hovered above the water, somewhat hesitant. She didn't want to retire from Jianghu. She was in the prime of her life, so she didn't have any thoughts of becoming a monk. It was just an ordinary washing of hands. But why did it have to be so ceremonial? Because she hadn't washed her hands for more than 2 months, to be precise, since the day they shook hands on Jiang Wang's victory at the Riverview platform. Her right hand had remained there until today. She hadn't washed it even once. Today was the 27th day of the 9th month in the year 3919 in the Taoist calendar. According to the Yellow Dragon Guard General Huang Fu, he had calculated for a long time that today was the day to wash her hands. If she washed her hands on this day, she would receive the blessings of the gods and Buddhas. Her hands would be smooth and soft, unbelievably beautiful. So after much persuasion, Huang Sheli finally agreed to wash her hands on this day, ending her beautiful memories that had lasted for more than 2 months. It was enough. She, Huang Sheli, wasn't someone who was greedy for beauty. She would just hold it again next time. But it really left a lasting aftertaste. Beauty Zhang's heroic posture on the Riverview platform was like a shooting star, and her sword was like the bright moon. Especially when she showed the state of a sword immortal. That flowing fire surrounded her, her frosty white cloak fluttered, and her eyes shone. It was simply beautiful. And Huang Sheli was on the stage, holding the beauty's hand. Many people were envious, and she was close to the water and enjoyed the moonlight first. Although it was just a few short breaths, she had already squeezed and touched it with her saving the world 24 Sans Ho skill. She also thought about it thousands of times in her heart. Thinking about it now, there was still a lingering fragrance. That, the general of the Yellow Dragon Guard, who was squatting at the side like an old farmer, wearing a skullcap and holding a tobacco pipe, couldn't help but say, "Girl, the auspicious time has arrived. Hurry up and wash your hands. Let's practice the 24 Sans Ho of saving the world. I haven't practiced for 2 months. You're not lying to me, are you, old man?" Huang Sheli turned his head and looked at him suspiciously. "What beauty day! Are you trying to trick me into practicing your broken Sans Ho? To save the people of the world, the 24 Sans Ho required the heart to be as clear as a mirror and the hands to be as clear as colored glass. To put it simply, the hands had to be clean and spotless. Hands that had not been washed for more than 2 months naturally did not meet the standard. How could that be? Huang Fu flicked his pipe and stood up excitedly. Your father calculated for a long time, and even Buddha nodded. Why would I lie to you? It's beautiful. Huang Sheli curled his lips. All right. Although he was a little dissatisfied with his old father's way of coaxing people, he still retracted his gaze and put his hand into the basin. Reporting. At this moment, a soldier landed outside the courtyard and knelt down to report. Huang Fu casually inserted the pipe into his belt and turned his head to look at him. What's the matter? At the same time, he reached out and pressed down on Huang Sheli. You wash your hands. Of course, Huang Sheli would not listen and looked over with his eyes wide open. If he did not see it with his own eyes, it would be hard for anyone to imagine that this old farmer wearing a skullcap was actually the great general of the Yellow Dragon Guard who shook the Jing kingdom with his salvation and exorcism pestle. The soldier respectfully handed over a sealed letter and said, His Majesty ordered this news to be spread to all the prefectures. All the generals need to hear it. Huang Fu casually took the letter and tore it open. What news? Huang Sheli hurriedly jumped over. What news is so urgent? Let me see, let me see. Huang Fu simply spread out the letter and read it with his daughter. Normally, this kind of news passed down by the Jing Emperor's personal order should be confidential and only the great general could read it. However, Huang Sheli was even casually playing with Huang Fu's great general seal. The soldiers in the courtyard were already used to it. As soon as the letter was spread out and read 2 lines, Huang Fu felt that something was wrong and wanted to roll it up. However, Huang Sheli had already snatched it away. Give it to me. This was a letter that summarized the important information from the morning. What the Jing Emperor wanted Huang Fu to read was naturally the Sanqing Palace's public announcement that the Mirror World platform's prestige had been greatly damaged. The Jing Kingdom, the Qi Kingdom, and the Mu Kingdom might have a chain reaction. Under the current situation, the Jing Kingdom, which was also in the northern region like the Mu Kingdom, also had a lot of room for strategic choices and had to be carefully considered. However, what Huang Fu saw and knew that his daughter's eyes would definitely light up was the news that Jiang Wang had broken the legends of history and created the first inner mansion since ancient times. Wonderful! Huang Shelley flicked the letter and laughed. This is the first inner mansion in the history of the Qing dynasty. As expected of the man who could reach the final stage with me. No, Huang Fu said sadly, why don't you wash your hands first and then we can… What's there to wash? Huang Shelley put the letter away and strode out. This is the hand of the first inner mansion in the history of the Qing dynasty. It's much more reliable than your Buddha's hand. I'll keep it until the next time I meet Beauty Jiang to show my sincerity. Huang Fu glared fiercely at the soldier who delivered the letter, then turned his head and said listlessly, Hey, don't show this letter to anyone. It's very confidential. Then, a ball of paper was thrown back at him. Huang Shelley's voice was already floating outside the courtyard. Since it's so troublesome, you can keep it for yourself. Huang Fu caught the ball of paper and squatted down like an old farmer. He unfolded the crumpled letter with his left hand and continued to ponder the news in it with his eyes. He held the pipe in his right hand and took a puff with a sad face. I'm so worried, he sighed. First, it was the state of Shen, then the state of Rome. After going in a big circle, it finally arrived at the state of Zheng. Jiang Wang's mood could only be described as worried. If Yu Beidu hadn't shown such terrifying strength at the Broken Soul Gorge, he would have even suspected that his secret technique of remembrance had been tricked again. Why hadn't he shown up after chasing him for so long? The whole world was singing his name, but he still didn't know about it. With a burst of energy, he followed the prompts of recollection and ran around randomly. He had seen the evil of the demons. Back in the Yong Kingdom, he couldn't help but show up to save the cultivators of the Green Cloud Pavilion when he saw them cooking. If he could kill them back then, he would have done so. Now that he had a long sword in his hand and saw the enemy, there was no reason for him to let them go. This young Tianjiao, who was currently in the limelight, didn't know that he had completely cleared himself of the suspicion of being a demon. He even hid his identity with a bamboo hat, the dragon head staff, and other items. Walking through the small city of the Zhen Kingdom, he felt like he had been in a foreign land for many years. Suddenly, he stopped. His remembrance had stopped. In front of him was an inn. A vertical plaque hung down. It was called Guest House. The Wan Ding celebration of Qidian's book Circle has begun. Signed Book of Journey to the West, published by Ajin this year. Qixin character mug, Qixin character sign. Genuine readers can participate in the lucky draw by replying with participate. Chapter 1342. On the wide bed, Liang Nine was lying on his back, panting slightly, his face flushed red. His upper body was exposed to the air, while his lower body was hidden under the blanket. A slender white finger was moving around his chest, drawing meaningless symbols. The woman wearing the faceless mask was holding her forehead with her other hand, half curled up at the side, greasy snow, red cherry, all the flavors would disappear by themselves. Her curves were exquisite, as if they were drawn with a brush. She was plump and thin, like a delicacy, and the blanket supporting her was a plate. Liang Nine was already full. He was so full that he did not even want to move a finger. But that slender finger moving around his chest seemed to have some kind of magic. He could not help but look to the side, at the mountains, at the water. Into the mountains and into the water. What are you looking at? The woman asked seductively. Liang Nine looked at her in a daze. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed his saliva and muttered, "Can I see you under the mask? I want to see you, I want to see more of you, I want to remember everything about you." No. Yanzi refused without hesitation. Looking at Liang Nine's disappointed eyes, she scratched his nose and explained, "Idiot. I am protecting you, have you forgotten my nickname? Fifth demonic human, mask demonic human, mask demonic human." As if cold water had been poured over him, Liang Nine suddenly woke up from his drunken lust, fear appearing in his eyes. Yanzi gently touched his face, bringing out a dreamlike warmth and gentleness. "Be good, don't be afraid. Big sister can't bear to hurt you." "I understand." Liang Nine's eyes were filled with tears as he stammered, "Without you, I don't know how to live, silly child." Yanzi pressed against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Even without me, you have to live well, because I want you to live well." Yanzi closed her eyes, "Because I really like you, really, really miss you." The mask was pressed against his chest, but it did not bring him any discomfort, as if it was a human face. Liang Nine was already used to this feeling, and felt that he was trapped in some kind of happiness as he softly said, "Big sister, we have to be together forever." "How far is forever? What we want can we have?" Swallow leaned against his chest and asked softly, "If someone wanted to kill me, what would you do?" Liang Nine gritted his teeth. "I will kill him." The swallow asked again, "What if even I can't defeat that person?" "Then I will die before you," Liang Nine said. "You're so nice," the swallow murmured, and the sound went down, down, and down, hiss, bang. The door was kicked open. Jiang Wang, dressed in a green robe, walked in. He casually took off his cloak, revealing his increasingly angular face. He put away his dragon-headed cane and pulled out his Sauvignon Blanc. He said politely, "Sorry to disturb you." Liang Nine, who had turned his head in anger, was stunned. How could he forget Yu Songhai? He would always remember Yu Songhai. On that bloody night, this man stepped out of the dark clouds and rescued Feng Ming from the hands of the 4 human demons, breaking the mountain-locking array. How he wished that Yu Songhai had saved him. He thought that he would be so grateful that he would be willing to do anything for the rest of his life. But the hero only made a move for a moment, and that ray of light did not shine on him. Back then, he could only save Feng Ming and run. Today, he could already chase after him with a sword? Was this a genius? Was this a hero? Was this the true protagonist of this world? And what was the thing that he, who was as lowly as a worm, had to hold on to at all costs? Liang Nine jumped up from the bed. His entire body was naked. He opened his arms and pounced at Jiang Wang. He shouted angrily, "Swallow, run!" There was a flash of cold light. He grabbed his neck with both hands and fell from the sky. Blood flowed through the gaps between his fingers. He knelt on the ground and knocked his head against the floor. His eyes were in a daze. He looked over his shoulder and happened to look in the direction of the window. The world was turning upside down. He only saw a shadow disappear outside the window. Then, he saw Yu Songhai's back as he chased after him. No one left a word for him. Not a single person gave him a second glance. This was how the world was. Jiang. Meeting on a narrow path, life and death are decided. Isn't it enough to kill the 3 of them? Why are you still chasing after me? The veiled devilman flew in the air, shocked and angry. Ever since she escaped from the soul-severing gorge, she had taken countless detours from Shen to Rong to Jing. Without the diviner, she knew she could no longer run around as freely as before without fear of leaving traces, so she was extra cautious. When she needed to show her face, Liang Nine would do it for her. But she did not expect to be found in Jing. Jiang Wang stepped on the clouds. His footsteps were calm and so was his voice. 1 against 4. Naturally, I have to kill all 4. Otherwise, later generations will think that I don't live up to my name. This was a city in Jing. Jiang Wang followed Zhuai Ci's instructions, and did not pay attention to its name. But they flew in the sky one after the other. Naturally, there were local experts who quickly rose into the air to intercept them. "Who are you? Tell me your name." "De Qi Jiang Wang is here to capture the Veiled Devilman. With the Zhu He Alliance, he can fly straight to your territory. No one can interfere." At this moment, Jiang Wang did not care about exposing his identity. Anyway, the battle in Xingyue Plain had already begun. It did not matter whether he was missing or not. He directly showed his identity and used the Zhu He Alliance to pressure people. What he didn't expect was that the cultivators flying high up in the sky would shout loudly, as if they had seen a legendary figure, come and see, it's Jiang Wang." Cultivators flew up from all over the city and shouted, "Is the #1 inner palace expert in Qing history here? Where is he? Which one is Jiang Wang?" Jiang Wang was stunned for a moment, but he quickly reacted. He did not care what happened. He would use it if he could. He shouted, "Help me stop her." Considering the devilman's fierceness, to avoid hurting the innocent, he immediately added, "Those below the outer building realm, don't send yourselves to death." But he was obviously thinking too much. There were indeed many figures in the sky, but none of them dared to stop the Veiled Devilman. They all watched from afar. "Is this Jiang Wang? He really has a temperament. His figure is also good. Are you an idiot? Jiang Wang is the one behind." After all, it was only a small city in Jing State. It was hard to find a master who could rival the Veiled Devilman. When they heard that Jiang Wang was chasing the Devilman, they all came out to watch the show, but they were just watching the show. Jiang Wang did not know what to say. He could only carry his sword and continue chasing. Little did he know that Swallow was also on the verge of collapse. She wanted to create a disturbance and take the opportunity to escape. Unexpectedly, there was no disturbance in the city at all. Those people were all calmly watching the show. No one was afraid of the Devilman. But they did not think that the #1 inner palace expert in history was here. Why would they be afraid of the Devilman? Swallow's figure exploded in the air, splitting into 3 shadows, and flying in 3 directions. If it were before, Jiang Wang would have lost her. But at this moment, a wisp of green smoke ignited on his fingertip, and he decisively chased south. Chapter 1343. After Yu Beidu personally went to the Punishment Cliff, and the Sanqing Palace publicly cleared Jiang Wang's name, Jing country maintained their silence from beginning to end. They didn't insist that Jiang Wang was guilty, nor did they try to explain anything. People from all over the world constantly stood up to criticize the Mirror World platform for wronging Jiang Wang, but those with the most power never expressed their opinions. It was as if there was an invisible cover that limited the heated discussion to a certain extent. Although it was raging, it couldn't cause a raging wave. Everyone knew that the Jing kingdom would never deal with this matter by diluting it. Under Qi's close watch, this matter couldn't be diluted. People were waiting for the strongest country in the world to express their opinion. Countless pairs of eyes were fixed on the overlord of the central region. At this moment, Jing Kingdom's Western Celestial Master, Yu Qian, suddenly appeared in Qing Nation's Jiangzhou city. He represented Emperor Jing at Qing Nation's Empress Dowager's birthday banquet and personally presented a congratulatory gift. Due to the battle in Liyuan City, this birthday banquet was originally cancelled. In addition, perfected cultivator UK, who was ranked first in the 8 Jia of Jing Kingdom, personally went to Xiang Nation's capital to admire the giant elephant at Wanhe Temple. At such a sensitive time, 2 perfected cultivators from Chang and Jing left the country one after another and approached 2 battlefield. The Jing Kingdom's attitude was very clear. They wanted to use 2 victories to shut the world up. The Jing Kingdom didn't express any opinion on the Mirror World platform's wrongful treatment of Jiang Wang. It was as if they were free to do whatever they want. However, Just the departure of the Jing Kingdom's two perfected cultivators from the Jing Kingdom had quietly begun to change the direction of public opinion. There were already voices saying, Jiang Wang got rid of the crime of colluding with the devil only because Qi wanted to challenge the Jing Kingdom's arrangement. Yu Beidu had long wanted to enter the stargazing tower. This time, he didn't hesitate to use his reputation to express goodwill to Qi. It's just a deal. Since ancient times, there have been countless ambitious people who tried to challenge the Jing Kingdom. Back then, the Jing Kingdom that unified the eastern region also led its troops to the west. Now, Qi can't avoid repeating the same mistake. Someone else said, the Sanqing Palace has been fighting for the first place for a long time, but I don't know how to compete with Taoism? Their attitude this time is really suspicious. There were even people who said, Yu Beidu is anxious to restore his position as the destiny-seizing technique, so it's not strange for him to do anything. For example, Jiang Wang's legendary battle record this time could also be fabricated. The country of Jing did not speak, but there were countless people in the world who spoke because of Jing. Just like earlier, when Jingguo publicly announced that Jiang Wang was suspected of being in cahoots with the devil and needed to be captured and brought to Mount Yujing for public trial, there was already a lot of criticism directed at Jiang Wang even before the relevant evidence was released. In many cases, Jingguo could almost be equated to the truth. His every move had countless fans. This was the profound influence left behind by Jing country, which had been in an absolutely powerful position for thousands of years. It was not something that could be changed overnight. In fact, discussions about Jiang Wang on Xingyue Plain had never stopped. Although Jiang Wang was not present in the battle between Tianjiao and Tianjiao, he had always been the focus of discussion in Tianjiao. In the military tent, when Lianmu deliberated over and over again, and finally opened his mouth. Actually, there's a saying that everyone has their own specialization. Wang Yiwu was expressionless. I was the first to enter the heavens, I was the first to enter the dragon, and I was also the first to enter the inner palace. As for the specialization, I specialize in battle. Ha, it seems like that. When Lianmu scratched his head, his mind whirling, and finally found a reason, Tianjiao was like clouds on the Riverview platform. When you collided with each other, of course, it triggered a lot of inspiration. You were in the army at that time and did not get to the Riverview platform, so you missed a lot of opportunities. If not for that, you would also. Wang Yiwu looked at the military report in his hand and said carelessly, I couldn't get to the Riverview platform because I lost to him at the East Street entrance, and then I was grounded. In Wen Lianmu's opinion, the more careless he acted, the more he cared about it. He wiped his cold sweat and quickly defended him. You can't say that. That time, you fought Cheng Gongsheng and 14 first, and then you fought Jiang Wang. It was inevitable that you were a little weak and could not perform at your best. Wang Yiwu finally glanced at him. I was weak when I fought Cheng Gongsheng. Wen Lianmu, are you sure you want to humiliate me like this? Cough. Actually, I wanted to say. Wen Lianmu felt like his head was about to explode. After holding it in for a long time, he said, Today is different from the past. Your weapon Grandmaster Theurgy needs time to grow, and you also need time to replenish it. In the future, there's still a long way to go. Wang Yiwu smiled faintly. Don't bully the young for being poor, don't bully the middle-aged for being poor, and don't force yourself when you're old. Then, let the dead be honored? That's not what I meant. Wen Lianmu said with a conflicted expression, What I meant was, when the time comes, the heavens and the earth will work together to bring forth the heroes, there will always be a chance. All right. Wang Yiwu waved his hand. It's fine if I'm one step behind. It's not a big deal. Others can fall behind, but I, Wang Yiwu, am the son of destiny that I can't fall behind. He looked at Wen Lianmu unhappily. But you don't have to keep reminding me, right? He. Wen Lianmu scratched the back of his head and laughed, pretending to be dumb. Of course, He was afraid that Jiang Wang's record of being the best in the history of the inner sanctum would break Wang Yiwu's fighting spirit. Therefore, he was trying his best to make up for it. However, he had forgotten, how could Wang Yiwu be Wang Yiwu? He was a true master who fought with the entire army to reach where he was today in Tianjiao. He was the one who won the title of being invincible in the same realm. He didn't rely on other people's flattery to reach where he was today. He relied on a pair of iron fists and a firm heart. So, was it because he was worried that Wang Yiwu's fighting spirit would be damaged, or was it because of himself that he retreated before the legendary record? Was he trying to find an excuse for Wang Yiwu, or was he trying to find a way to comfort himself? As an inner sanctum warrior, he defeated 4 outer sanctum demonic demons. How could he do it? Now that he knew the result of the battle, he couldn't figure out how to reverse the process. Let's go. Wang Yiwu put down the military report in his hand. The front army has already fought a few rounds without much pain. Let's go and see what the military meeting is about today. When Lianmu curled his lips, it's still the same half-hearted stuff. Fang Yu can't wait for the war to continue like this. After all, it's his own army. Of course, he wants to play chess with Lian Jingji. Wang Yiwu helped to explain and said coldly, but it's not up to him. The two of them stood up and walked out of the tent. The so-called chess was a shameless method of stalling for time in Chinese chess. It referred to repeated and meaningless threats to maintain the situation. It was usually forbidden. The pillar of Xiang country, Lian Jingji, and the Grand Marshal of Su country, Fang Yu, had a tacit understanding during this period of time. They fought many battles and didn't lose many people. Of course, this didn't escape the eyes of Wen Lianmu and Wang Yiwu. They had lived in the army since they were young. They could tell at a glance whether or not they fought seriously. 2 inner sanctum warriors in Tianjiao were casually commenting on a top god's descent general. There was no lack of ridicule. This scene was a bit rash, but the two of them were used to it. Even if Fang Yu heard it, he could only pretend that he didn't. This was the difference between Qi country and Su country. There were so many realms that couldn't be filled. The legalist sage Han Shintu said in his Theory of Force, that was published all over the world, a strong country's naughty child wielding a sharp weapon in the market of a weak country. Are you afraid of sharp weapons? Are you afraid of naughty children? The next sentence was answered, afraid of a strong country. Everything in the world was just like that. Chapter 1344. The theory of situation was known as the theory of situation and was a must-study for legalists. Han Shintu was an unparalleled master of legalism. When Lianmu and Wang Yiwu had naturally read his famous work. However, they probably didn't think of themselves as naughty children. Everyone was in the floating world sea and it was hard to notice. When Wang Yiwu and Wen Lianmu walked into the commander's tent, the Tianjiao of the eastern region had already taken their seat. In addition to Bao Buozhao, Chao Yu, and Xie Bao Shu, who had already arrived at Xingyue Plain, Lei Zhanqian, who had arrived a few days late, was also present. Fang Yu hadn't arrived yet, but there was an extra chair beside the empty commander's seat. A cold-faced woman with a pair of phoenix eyes was sitting on the chair. She looked to be in her 40s and didn't look friendly. In the entire Su country, the only woman who could sit side by side with Fang Yu in this commander's tent was the famous Madame Shidu. She was also the only other divine master in the Su country. Fang Yu and Madame Shidu had both gone to the battlefield of Xingyue Plain. At least on the surface, the Su country had done enough. Wang Yiwu had always been arrogant and didn't look at anyone. After entering the tent, he sat down by himself. When Lianmu silently paid attention to Madame Shidu. At the same time, he sized up the newcomer, Lei Zhanqian. This Tianjiao, who had become famous earlier than Wang Yiwu and had been trampled on by Jiang Wang even more ruthlessly, had a haggard look on his face. He sat there and still looked awe-inspiring, but his domineering aura was hard to find. In this battle of Xingyue Plain, among the young Qi Tianjiao, some were focused on the blue metal like Xing Shangming, and some were like Yung Genzuan, who looked down on this young Tianjiao battlefield and went to fight for the ocean merit role in the bewildering world. As for the other one, according to the established rules, usually, a family wouldn't send two direct descendants to the same battlefield at the same time. For example, Bao Buozhao came to Star Moon Plain, but Bao Zhongqing did not. Li Longchuan came, but Li Fengyao didn't. The Lei Zhanqian family was not without foundation in the military, so he did not know why Lei Zhanqian had arrived so late. When Lianmu sat down beside Wang Yiwu and glanced around, Tianjiao's youngsters were all whispering to each other. Madame Shidu remained silent and looked at him coldly. He didn't know if it was intentional or not, but from the fatty surnamed Chongshuan's side, there would always be words like, the best inner palace since ancient times, and what it means to be invincible in the same realm. It made one's ears grow calluses from listening to it. It was really annoying. After a while, Fang Yu donned his armor and walked into the tent. After all, he was the commander on the battlefield. Everyone in the tent, regardless of country or Tianjiao, stood up and saluted. Sit! Fang Yu gestured with her hand, ending the greeting. This was a man with a broad face and a pair of warm eyes. However, his words and actions were very straightforward and did not like to drag things out. I have something to say. He sat down and said, recently the war situation has been quite stalemate and I have been worried about it. In order to break the situation as soon as possible, and at the same time, to display the talents of Tianjiao's youngsters. Now I have decided to take out the main army of 50,000 people and organize them into 10 battalions. Fang Yu looked around. These 10 battalions will be under the control of you youngsters, and you will have absolute autonomy. You are hunters and also prey. The entire Xingyue Plain will be your hunting boundary. It was obvious that the Battle of Xingyue Plain would enter a new stage from now on. The kind of small skirmishes that would not break skin and bleed were no longer allowed. People like Wang Yiwu and Cheng Gongxing naturally knew that it was pressure from Qi's military hall. However, even they did not expect Fang Yu to be so decisive and directly let the youngsters of Tianjiao take control of the military power. It was definitely not stingy to have 5,000 people per battalion. However, there were only 10 battalions in total. There were so many people of Tianjiao present, and there were 11 people from Qi. Who could be in charge? Who could not? Or to put it another way, who could take the credit? Who could only watch? Who could watch? These 10 battalions' commanders will be announced tomorrow. You can discuss among yourselves who is suitable and who is not. Madame Shidu will listen to your opinions. Fang Yu's words were very straightforward. After he finished speaking, he got up and left without hesitation. The tent curtains fell heavily, blocking the starlight outside. There was a moment of silence in the military tent. There were only 10 battalions in total, so naturally Qi's Tianjiao had priority. And in Qi's Tianjiao, Bao Buozhao, Chao Yu, and Xie Bao Shu were the 3 outer building realm cultivators of Tianjiao. Their strength was above a level, and there was no doubt that they could each lead a battalion. Wang Yiwu, Cheng Gongxing, Li Longchuan, and Yan Fu were the 4 of them. Their strength was not ordinary, and their backgrounds were top-notch. Of course, they would not be left behind. In this way, they had already gone to 7 battalions. This battle was led by the army of Su country. No matter how great the people of Qi were, Li Shuwen of Su country's Tianjiao should also have a seat. Thus, 8 of the 10 battalions were occupied, and there were only 2 seats left to fight for. The Tian family was not inferior to the Li family and the Yen family. However, Tian Cheng's status in the Tian family was not high enough. He was not a legitimate son, and he did not have enough strength to crush his peers. Although he was highly valued by the Tian family this year, so he was sent to Xingyue Plain to participate in the battle. But if he wanted to get this seat, he still needed to fight for it. In addition, Gao Zhi was also qualified to fight for a seat. Although the Gao family was not a top-notch family, Gao Zhi was the heir of the family. His status in the family was not inferior to anyone else. Lei Zhanqian's situation was similar to Gao Zhi's, but he was better in all aspects. The Lei family was also not among the top-notch families in Deqi, but they were stronger than the Gao family. Lei Zhanqian himself was not as strong as Bao Buozhao, but he was stronger than Gao Zhi. Thus, he had more hope of getting a seat. Of course, Gao Zhi might not agree. When Lianmu was a famous genius in the art of war. He was born in the military and had won first place in many military exercises. Relatively speaking, he should be in charge of a battalion. The only problem was that he didn't have a strong background. Those who felt that they would have a seat could sit on the fishing platform. Those who knew that they needed to fight for a seat were observing each other. I think I should be in charge of a battalion. Gao Zhi was the first to speak. My uncle is the county governor of the Red Tail County, and he became famous in the Battle of Jingyang. I have been learning the art of war from my uncle since I was young. I should contribute to Deqi in Xingyue Plain. Hearing this, Li Longchuan couldn't help but glance at Cheng Gongxing. Cheng Gongxing smiled but didn't say anything. Regarding the Battle of Jingyang, he didn't call it the Battle of Jingyang, but the Battle of Jingyang, which meant that he had restored order in the land of Yang, helped the people of Yang to solve the problem, killed the evil god, and swept away the corrupt rule of Yang Jianda, who secretly cultivated the evil arts. But the problem was that those who truly understood the battle all knew that. The one who started the battle was Cheng Gongxing, and the one who led the battle was Chongxian Chu Liang. Gao Shaoling had only gotten a seat through the exchange of benefits. His art of war hadn't even been tested, but Gao Zhi was already using his name. Since he wanted to use his name, he might as well say that he had learned the art of war from Cheng Gongxing. In any case, this fatty had made a greater contribution in the Battle of Jingyang. That was what Li Longchuan's gaze meant. Of course, this was also because the Gao family didn't have much of a foundation. The family head, Gao Xianchang, was just a mediocre person who relied on his sister to rise in status. The rest of the Gao family was even more unknown. Looking at the entire family, only Gao Shaoling was worth mentioning. Gao Zhi couldn't say that he had learned the art of war from imperial concubine Jing, could he? Chapter 1345. Out of the 10 main commanders, 8 of them had already been decided. Everyone was well aware of this. Only Tian Chang, Wen Lianmu, and Lei Zhanqian could compete with Gao Zhi for the remaining 2 positions. As for Tianjiao, which was outside of Qi, he didn't even consider it. This sudden war seemed to be intense, but in essence, it was just a clash between the younger generation of the Qi kingdom and the Jing kingdom. Both sides wanted to test each other's strength, but they didn't want to escalate the conflict. If the hegemons fought with all their strength, countries like Qi and Su would probably be reduced to ruins. Therefore, from the perspective of Qi and Su, they would rather act out this war themselves. At least they would receive compensation from the hegemons after the war. They had to choose between the 2 evils. That was why the current situation happened. The younger generation of Tianjiao and Jing went to Xingyue Plain together. It could be said that the stars were fighting for glory. That was why the commander of the Fighting Disaster Army, UK, only observed the scene at Wanhe Temple but didn't come to Xingyue Plain. In reality, he was exerting his power on the world, not Qi. On Xingyue Plain, other countries except Qi and Jing were just supporting characters. While Bao Buozhao and the other 8 were sitting on the fishing platform, Gao Zhi thought that if he spoke first, everyone would give him face and secure one of the positions. After all, Gao Zhi was one of the few young masters who had been confirmed as the heir. His social circle was very influential. Yan Fu, Jiang Wang, Cheng Gongxing, Li Longchuan, They all often went to drink and have fun. Although there were some small conflicts yesterday, it didn't affect the overall situation. The Gao family and Zhenggenjia had interests involved. Gaozha was also worth investing in. However, as soon as Gaozha finished speaking, Lei Zhanqian, who was sitting diagonally across from him, immediately looked up and looked at him. He sat like a tiger crouching. His eyes were like the angry sea. You choose between the academic competition or the martial competition, Lei Zhanqian said. Gaozha was speechless. Are you King crazy? There are still 2 spots left. I just opened my mouth and you want to compete with me? If I tell you my advantages, you can also tell me yours. Can't we discuss it together? Can't you King see who's fighting for the next spot? Can't you just pick the weakest persimmon? Preposterous. Intolerable bullying. But under such circumstances, he couldn't show weakness right away. Otherwise, contributing to De Qi would become a joke. Therefore, he sneered, so what if it's a literary competition? So what if it's a martial competition? When Lianmu heard Lei Zhanqian's speech, he wanted to say, when it comes to the art of war, I'm not sleepy at all. However, when he saw how explosive Lei Zhanqian was, he restrained himself. Hearing Gaozha's stubbornness at this time, he became even more spirited and pricked up his ears in high spirits. Gaozha's biggest problem was that he couldn't grasp the situation clearly. In this aspect, he was exactly the same as Gao Qing, who had been crippled. In the entire Si Gao clan, Gao Jing was probably the most outstanding person in the younger generation, but unfortunately, he was lost in the Heaven's secret realm. Gao Jing also had the same problem. This was probably the entire Si Gao clan's problem. They took Emperor Qi's love for noble consort Jing as the unwavering authority of the Si Gao clan. Therefore, they considered themselves as the top clan in De Qi. Last time, they were able to get 2 spots in the Heaven's secret realm. Gao Shaoling was able to easily secure the position of the Red Tail Town ambassador. These things gave them an illusion. However, this foundation was extremely shaky. Jiang Wuqi's own flesh and blood, who was like a father to the emperor, also fell out of favor one day. How could noble consort Jing's favor be unwavering? Not to mention, there was another fatal weakness. Noble consort Jing was childless. Gaozha's value wasn't as great as he thought. Yan Fu and Li Longchuan had been bringing him along to play because he had a clear head in the past. It wasn't because of how great the Gao clan was. Even a foreigner like Lin Xian could see the rift between him and people like Cheng Gongxing. However, he thought it was a small matter. There were many people in the world who were willing to give face to the Si Gao clan. Unfortunately, there weren't many in this tent. Lei Zhanqian didn't slap the face, so when Lianmu went up, even Tian Chang was eager to give it a try. For someone like Lei Zhanqian, since he raised his hand, he naturally wouldn't hold back. He said without hesitation, "The competition is a fight between the 2 of us. The competition is a fight between the 2 of us. Life and death are fated, and we don't blame each other. You can choose any one of them. I'm willing to do it." Speaking of which, Lei Zhanqian originally had the qualifications to be the main general. Although the Lei clan wasn't a top clan, he was the cousin of the Longevity Palace Lord, Jiang Wuqi. However, his success was because of Jiang Wuqi, and his failure was because of Jiang Wuqi. He was destined to share Jiang Wuqi's glory and his downfall. The waves of Cui Ju's assassination seemed to have stopped in the morning in front of the Purple Extreme Palace. However, the ripples from this never stopped in the Qi. At least for the Longevity Palace, this was the case. Compared to the Chang'e Palace, Huaying Palace, and Yangxin Palace, the Longevity Palace's influence had obviously plummeted. Although the emperor forgave Jiang Wuqi, he didn't treat the 11th prince as close as before. In the past, he would be summoned into the palace to accompany them for meals. However, after Cui Ju's assassination, this had never happened again. Due to all these reasons, Lei Zhanqian still needed to fight for a spot on Xingyue Plain. However, to fight for a spot with a nouveau riche like Gaozhe, it was a great humiliation for Lei Zhanqian. Therefore, he said that life and death were fated, and didn't give Gaozhe any face. Gaozhe, f*ck your mother. This was a choice between a literary competition and a martial competition. Where was the word literary in it? Other than fighting for his life, it was still fighting for his life. However, how could he dare to fight for his life with Lei Zhanqian? Although Jiang Wang beat Lei Zhanqian like he was beating a child, he also had the right to fight for a spot on the Riverview platform. Gaozhe was so embarrassed that his face began to ache. Fortunately, he had already been embarrassed once yesterday, and this feeling wasn't unfamiliar to him. The corners of his mouth twitched as he forced himself to say, "What literary competition, martial competition, life and death without resentment, what a joke. There are still 2 positions for generals. We can take one each. There's no need to make both sides suffer. It won't look good." At this point, he was already admitting defeat. He was just barely holding on to his face. Although it was laughable, it was actually a little pitiful. But how could Wen Lianmu and Tian Chong agree to it when he directly and neatly divided the positions? "I don't know if Brother Lei can get a spot," Tian Chong said calmly. Tian Chong said in a calm tone, "But Brother Gao, you've completely excluded me, and this point still needs to be discussed. Why don't you choose a literary competition or a martial competition with me?" This low-key and even somewhat dull person revealed his sharp teeth occasionally, and it was actually cold and fierce. When Lianmu smiled and said, "If it's a clash of armies, I don't mind fighting against anyone." No one was willing to give in. Gaozhe quickly weighed the pros and cons in his heart and said decisively, "Since Brother Tian said so, I'll fight for a spot with you. Brother Lei and Brother Wen are fighting for a spot. Everyone is working hard for Dachi. There's no need to complain." He wasn't a complete idiot. He was a little smart. Otherwise, he wouldn't have thought of using Jiang Wang's name to suppress Lin Xian. These words seemed fair, but in fact, it changed the situation of 4 people fighting for 2 spots into 2 people fighting for 1 spot. He knew that his cultivation wasn't as good as Lei Zhanqian's, and his leadership wasn't as good as Wen Lianmu's. If it was 4 people fighting for 2 spots, he probably wouldn't get anything. However, it was different if it was 2 people fighting for 1 spot, because the persimmon that seemed to be the easiest to bully had already been put into one group by him. This was the most beneficial choice he could think of in a short time. Lei Zhanqian didn't say anything because he didn't care who he was fighting against. Wen Lianmu also didn't say anything. When it came to leading armies, he had his own pride. He knew that he wouldn't lose to Lei Zhanqian. Tian Chong was even more silent. He couldn't be more satisfied that Gaozhe treated him as a soft persimmon. However, Cheng Gongxing's voice sounded at this moment, "No, you only have 1 spot left." Gaozhe looked over in shock and anger. Cheng Gongxing didn't look at him. He leaned on a specially made large chair and looked around. He said slowly, "I believe that everyone already knows about Jiang Wang's matter. I originally advised him to focus on his cultivation, but now that everyone knows about it, he should come to Xingyue Plain and return a gift to the people of Jing. I've already sent someone to invite him. He should be here within 2 days." Speaking of this, he smiled. "I don't think anyone will object to the number 1 inner palace in the history of the Qing dynasty occupying a camp, right?" "Of course not." Someone immediately responded, "With Jiang Wang here, what's Su San? So what if he's Wang Kun? What's there to be afraid of?" The person who spoke was Lin Jie from Tianjiao of Yi Country. Cheng Gongxing glanced at him. He was surprised that this person was so accurate. Yi Country was a small country south of Chang Country. It wasn't far from Tianxing Cliff and was deeply influenced by legalism. The people of this country were more upright and outspoken, and there was a widespread spirit of honesty. The names mentioned by Lin Jie were all famous inner palace cultivators of Tianjiao of Jing country. After all, Jiang Wang had achieved the title of the #1 inner palace cultivator in both ancient and modern times. There was indeed no need to be modest in the first realm of the inner palace. If Lin Jie mentioned Tianjiao's outer palace cultivators like Chen Xuan of Jing country, it would be somewhat suspicious of him. Now, this scale was very subtle. He was a talent. Cheng Gongxing was in the mood to comment on people here, but Gaozhi's mood was ruined by a sentence. Looking at Cheng Gongxing, he forced a smile and said, "Ah Xing, don't joke around. Jiang Wang hasn't even come yet." Cheng Gongxing looked at him with a smile. "I never joke with people I'm not familiar with." As soon as this sentence came out, his position was clear and the boundary was clear. From now on, he would no longer play with Gaozhi. Gaozhi was stunned and couldn't react for a moment. Although Jiang Wang is famous, he's not even here. It's not appropriate for him to occupy a camp's main force, right? This is a battlefield, not a place to play. We're here to fight for life and death and determine victory and defeat, not to draw a sand table and place chess pieces. If he wants to occupy a seat, why didn't he come earlier? A voice suddenly said from a few rows of seats behind. "Who is this person?" Cheng Gongxing asked the people around him. "Gu Yan of the Zhao country," the young man with a stubborn expression said loudly. He stared at Cheng Gongxing unyieldingly, unwilling to show any weakness. Among the countries of the eastern region, if there was a ranking of the small countries that admired Qi the most, the Zhao country would definitely be in the top few. Compared to the Yang country back then, it was closer to Qi. Regardless of those in power, the vast majority of the people of the Zhao country were eager to merge into Qi. Unexpectedly, in such a country, there was still someone with a temper who dared to question the famous Tianjiao from Qi. Li Longchuan directly stood up and walked to this person. He raised his chin and said, "Go out, let's have a chat." He was too straightforward and his aura was too domineering. Gu Yan was obviously stunned for a moment. He couldn't help but turn his head and look at Madame Shidu. Madame Shidu, who had the highest cultivation and status in the tent, sat quietly next to the commander's seat. She was indifferent to this. Obviously, she was very clear-headed and knew who was in charge of this war. And those who weren't clear-headed should also be clear-headed after seeing her attitude. Gu Yan's face turned green and white. In the end, he gritted his teeth and walked out of the tent. "Then I'll talk with you," he said fiercely. The two of them walked out of the tent one after the other. No one in the tent expressed an opinion about this. It had to be said that there was nothing wrong with Gu Yan's questioning in theory. But the essence of this matter was to question the dominance of Tianjiao from Qi on this side of the battlefield. So Li Longchuan didn't reason with him at all. He directly suppressed him and took him out of the tent. It was to point directly at the bull's eye and see through the enemy's momentum. Gu Yan either wanted to fight for the rights of the small country or wanted to take credit for himself. Li Longchuan was too lazy to care. As the son of the Li family of Stonegate, he also had the right to not care. The positions of the 10 camps that Fang Yu released were definitely more important than their current value. Otherwise, Cheng Gongxing wouldn't have to fight for Jiang Wang. Jiang Wang, who had become the first inner house in history, had a bright future. When he returned to Qi, he would be able to take whatever he wanted. He would also be rewarded by the emperor. Generally speaking, ordinary benefits didn't need to be taken seriously. But now Gaozhi, Tianchong, and Wen Lianmu were arguing with each other. Lei Zhanqian, who didn't seem to want to participate in the Xingyue Plain battlefield, rushed here before tonight. Presumably, they had all received some news about it. Li Longchuan combined some of the information he heard and was 70 to 80% sure. He decisively came forward and cooperated. He didn't even look at Cheng Gongxing. In Cheng Gongxing's mind, there was only one word: peace of mind. As expected of a military family, he learned the art of war since young. Compared to Jiang Wang, this was much more peace of mind. Cheng Gongxing and Li Longchuan easily controlled the situation here. Yan Fu was also indifferently watching from the side. Gao Zhi was trapped in a violent rage and couldn't break free for a long time. There was no way he could compete with Lei Zhanqian. He was very clear about this. If Jiang Wang also wanted a position, then he wouldn't have the chance to lead the camps this time. He came to the Xingyue Plain battlefield this time to make a name for himself. How could he stop here? If he were to just give up like this, then why did he have to suffer like this? Wasn't it cool to be a local tyrant in Jinghai Prefecture? He knew that he had already offended Cheng Gongxing by using Jiang Wang's absence to oppress others. But he didn't expect the other party to be so heartless. Was there really a need? Did he have to push him to the opposite side? Didn't he consider the benefits between the Gao clan and the Zhonggenjia? But Cheng Gongxing couldn't be reasoned with. He could only turn to Yan Fu. Brother Yan, Jiang Wang is already the first in history. He's a legendary figure. He doesn't lack fame. Even if he comes later, it's easy to arrange a camp. We're all friends. Is there a need to do this? Yan Fu looked at him deeply. In the end, he said warmly, you know Jiang Wang's personality. If you open your mouth and enter his camp, you can get a position as a deputy general. There were many hurtful words that could be said, but in the end Yan Fu still gave him face. But Gao Zhi didn't feel comforted at all. He only felt that it was ridiculous. I'm the heir to the Gao clan of Jinghai. Which camp can't I get a position as a deputy general? Do I need to beg Jiang Wang? Do you really want to force me? He said through gritted teeth. Yan Fu shook his head and laughed, but didn't say anything else. He treated people gently, but that didn't mean he was afraid of trouble. How could he be afraid of trouble when he once said he would cut down all gossip and not care about the other's background? He just left the last bit of face and didn't make a fuss. This was similar to the tolerance an adult had for a child. Gao Zhi, who realized this, ground his teeth so hard they almost broke. What he hated the most was feeling that he didn't receive enough respect from this group of people. Now, even Yan Fu treated him like this. But when Cheng Gongxing opened his mouth, he finally understood what it meant to be disrespected. You seem to think that if Jiang Wang doesn't occupy this camp, you'll have a position. Cheng Gongxing, who had suppressed his anger for a long time, looked coldly at Gao Zhi, who was gnashing his teeth. Are you stronger than Wen Lianmu or Tian Chong? It's important to know one's own worth. But I think you don't know your own worth at all. Tian Chong can kill you as easily as killing a chicken. Do you think you picked a soft persimmon? Tian Chong smiled but didn't say anything. Although he was surprised by Cheng Gongxing's sensitivity, he didn't show it on his face. Cheng Gongxing's words suddenly ignited Gao Zhi. The resentment he had accumulated for a long time suddenly exploded. So what if he's Jiang Wang? Does he have 3 heads and 6 arms? I've eaten and drunk with him, but I don't see anything different about him. I still don't know if his legendary battle record is true or not. Challenging the legend of the Elder of Tianfu? Don't you think it's ridiculous? 10,000 evil, cutting flesh, unmasking, beheading. Which one of them isn't an expert in the outer building realm, an existence full of evil? But Jiang Wang can fight 1 against 4? When those 3 human demons were killed by Jiang Wang, were they really in their peak condition? Or were they in their peak condition after being suppressed by Yu Beidu? From Linzi to overseas, Jiang Wang is used to creating momentum. Are you following in his footsteps and lying to yourselves? Your hostility toward Jiang Wang is truly inexplicable. It's hard to understand. Yan Fu frowned. When has he ever offended you? Gao Zhi had had enough of these people's contempt. He was prepared to smash the broken jar and completely shed all pretense of cordiality. Cheng Gongxing and the others didn't leave him any face. As the dignified heir of a large aristocratic family, how could he continue to flatter them? You can't justify yourself, so you're talking about this? He sneered. What we're talking about isn't whether he offended me or not, but how he can obtain the position of commander with just his name alone. Who is he? Is he qualified? It seems like you've been holding a grudge against Jiang Qingyang for a long time. Cheng Gungxing said indifferently. When he comes, should I ask him to apologize to you, and ask him how he made you unhappy? Then let's wait for him to come, Gao Zhi said coldly. At this moment, a voice came from behind Wang Yiwu. 10,000 evils, cut flesh, unmask and behead. When the 4 human demons besieged Jiang Wang, they were all in peak condition. This is absolutely true. Everyone looked toward the source of the voice. It was Lin Xian from Tianjiao of Rome. Gao Zhi exploded. He had the aura of a scholar. He laughed. How do you know? He didn't hold back when facing Lin Xian. You're licking Jiang Qingyang's boots here. Does he know? Will he pat your head and give you a bone to eat? Of course I know. Lin Xian was neither servile nor overbearing in the face of Gao Zhi's insults. He looked him in the eye and said clearly, because when the 4 human demons besieged Jiang Wang, I was there and saw it clearly. I, Lin Xian, started practicing the saber at the age of 3. At 15, I was the champion of my generation in Rome. At 17, I carried my saber to the Riverview platform and fought with the heroes of the world. Although I didn't get the title, I don't think anyone can look down on me. Gao Zhi, ask yourself, can you take one strike from me? What are you relying on to humiliate me like this today? Qi's power? Jing Hai's Gao family's power? Wait until you can be like Jiang Wang and rely on yourself. Then you can question Jiang Wang's achievements. You mean? Madame Shidu, who had been silent all this time, was moved. When Jiang Wang fought the 4 human demons alone, you were there. The battlefield was in the rock valley of the Broken Soul Gorge. At that time, I was hiding in the Khanate Chaos Array and saw the battle with my own eyes. Lin Xian said without hesitation, the evil retribution theurgy, the flesh-cutting union theurgy, the human face theurgy, and the extreme evil hungry ghost body of the beheader demonic man are all extremely powerful. The strength that Jiang Wang showed in that battle completely broke the limit of my imagination of the inner mansion stage. I have never seen such a person in the history books. I, Lin Xian, have never been convinced by anyone in my life, but I am convinced by Jiang Qingyang. I can only look up to him. The whole place was silent. Even Gao Zhi had to calm down, to be able to carefully measure himself, as Cheng Gungxing said. Until now, people finally understood why such a persevering and tenacious person like Lin Xian could say that he was willing to be Jiang Qingyang's lackey. If they could see the legend with their own eyes, they would be much more fanatical than Lin Xian. I think I know who Jiang Wang is, Madame Shidu said lightly. This sentence was in response to Gao Zhi's previous question. Of course, she always knew who Jiang Wang was, but she still had some doubts about his terrifying achievements. After all, there were a lot of rumors in the world. Until now, when Lin Xian confirmed it, she really knew who Jiang Wang was. If Jiang Wang is coming, Tian Chang smiled and said, he should have the position of chief general. I have no objection. When Lianmu shrugged, who can compare with Jiang Qingyang in the same realm? After saying this, he glanced at Wang Yiwu with a guilty conscience, but Wang Yiwu was expressionless. Lei Zhanqian said, then let's not waste time. I will lead the remaining battalion. Tian Chang, Wen Lianmu, Gao Zhi. His gaze swept over them one by one. If you don't agree, then come together. The atmosphere in the tent was boiling. Zhong Xianxing, on the other hand, was leaning back lazily as he grinned proudly. Speaking of which, the 2 most arrogant people in the tent today were both defeated by Jiang Wang. For them, it was probably one of the most profound memories in their lives. Wang Yiwu, who was arrogant, tacitly agreed that Jiang Wang was unmatched in the same realm. Lei Zhanqian, who wanted to fight 1 against 3, tacitly agreed that Jiang Wang had to occupy a battalion before he arrived. Chapter 1346. Under the pressure of Qi Ting, Fang Yu had to intensify the war. But this time, there were so many Tianjiao people in Xingyue Field. He only gave 10 places and then left, leaving only Madame Shidu, who didn't care about anything, in charge. He had the mentality of killing 3 soldiers with 2 peaches. Of course, this mentality only existed at the stage of suspicion, and there was no possibility of being confirmed. On the surface, no one could find any fault with Fang Yu. But those who could be called Tianjiao were not really stupid. Even if they knew the importance of this war, they were still very rational about the competition for the 10 places. From the beginning to the end, Gao Zhi was probably the only one who was arrogant. Maybe he needed a sense of existence too much and wanted to prove himself too much. So Cheng Gongxing poured cold water on him. The effect was good. The world was calm. Last night's battle for the last place. Let's not talk about it. Lei Zhanqian was arrogant and wanted to fight 3 people alone. Tian Chang, Wen Lianmu, and Gao Zhi didn't stand on ceremony and went up side by side. But the 3 of them didn't cooperate at all, especially Gao Zhi. It was like he was sleepwalking on the field. There was no order, and the more he fought, the more chaotic it became. In the end, he was defeated by Lei Zhanqian. Tian Chang, who couldn't see the Chao Xian saber, didn't use his full power, but there was nothing unacceptable about the result. He really couldn't see through the terrifying Thunder Realm. For Wen Lianmu, it was better to let him fight Lei Zhanqian alone with the chaotic cooperation of the 3 people. But if they fought with the army, it was inevitable that Lei Zhanqian would break it if there were fewer soldiers. How could Madame Shidu give him too many soldiers to fight with the army? So it was still an unsolved problem. He had to go back and continue to support Wang Yiwu. The 10 places promised by Fang Yu were all decided as the main generals. Except for Li Shuwen of Tianjiao of Su Country, who was the host, the Tianjiao of Qi was in charge. Fang Yu did not show any bias when he took out 50,000 of his main forces and split them into 10 battalions of similar strength. The soldiers under Li Shuwen's command were not much different from the soldiers under other people's command. They could be considered to be of equal strength. The various heavenly talents led their subordinates to perform the drill. Because Jiang Wang hadn't arrived yet, Cheng Gongxing asked Lin Xian to temporarily take charge of his camp. At first, he wanted to give this opportunity to Lin Jie of Tianjiao in Yi Country because he was very good at praising Jiang Wang. He was very suitable to be the deputy of the number 1 inner palace in history. However, it was clear that Lin Xian had been consistent from the beginning to the end. He had made himself look high and mighty, and had brought out a unique style. In the end, he had won Chongxian Fat's approval. Lin Jie wasn't at a disadvantage either. He was brought along by Yan Fu and became Yan Fu's deputy. With young Master Yan's protection, there was no chance for them to suffer in Xingyue Plain. His camp, not to mention other things, definitely had the best weapons and equipment in the entire army. They didn't lack anything from food and medicine. The first thing young Master Yan did when he took charge was to arrange for the entire army to change their equipment. He eliminated all the Su country's own military equipment and replaced it with the excellent military equipment he had purchased himself. He also provided some additional military resources to support Cheng Gongxing and Li Longchuan. The 2 young masters of the military families happily accepted it. They didn't have the slightest arrogance of the descendants of famous generals. They kept calling him Brother Yan Xian and even clamored for Brother Yan Xian's advice on the art of war. "Are you going to let go of everything now?" Madame Shidu asked in the commander's tent after everyone had left. "Otherwise?" Fang Yu leaned back in the commander's chair with his eyes slightly closed. "Maybe there are other ways. Maybe you can command them personally. Don't be naive." Fang Yu interrupted, This is the situation those people want, so we can only give them this. Those who risk their lives on the battlefield. Madame Shidu sighed. After all, they are the sons of Sioux country. They didn't have a choice from the beginning. They should be satisfied that they can drag it on until today. Fang Yu's tone was calm. It was so calm that it even had a little coldness to it, as if it had nothing to do with him. Madame Shidu also restrained her temporary frailty, and her face became cold again. She and Fang Yu were the only two ascendant gods in Sioux country. As the pillars of Sioux country, there was no room for weakness. Does a general have to have a heart of stone? Otherwise, can't he become a famous general? She asked indifferently. Fang Yu was expressionless. Emotions are a matter of war. In war, we only have gains and losses. I just received the news. Madame Shidu said. The army god also came. Where did he go? Fang Yu asked. He also went to Wanha Temple to observe the elephant. This answer was really unexpected, but it also made people feel that it was something Jiang Mingxiong would do. UK's move to Wanha Temple of Xiang country was a shock to the battlefield of Xingyue Plain. According to common sense, the state of Qi should have also sent a supreme immortal to some place in the state of Su, and they should have faced each other from a distance. This was in line with the situation of Xingyue Plain. Su country was even prepared to welcome him. Who would have thought that although Jiang Mingxiong came, he squeezed his butt to UK's side. During the War of Xingyue Plain, Xiang country could be considered Jing country's territory. For Jiang Mingxiong, although he didn't go deep into the tiger's den, there were still some risks. He really regarded thousands of soldiers as nothing and had the courage to go to the country alone. It's really suffocating, Fang Yu murmured. What about His Majesty? After a moment of silence, Madame Shidu asked. Fang Yu opened his eyes and looked at the dome. He's old. The Grand Marshal of Sioux country said. The king who didn't have a golden body and jade essence was indeed aging at a speed visible to the naked eye. The power of time was the most ruthless. After that, the tent was silent. The largest temple of spirit worship in Elephant Country was called Wanha, which meant everything goes smoothly. The giant elephant that stopped here was the holy spirit of Xiang Country. The giant elephant worshipped in Wanha Temple was called Songshan, and it was the leader of all the giant elephants in Xiang Country. It was huge and had the strength of a truth insight realm cultivator. It was gentle and never took the initiative to hurt others. The people of Xiang Country built temples to worship it in exchange for Songshan's protection. For thousands of years they lived together in such a strange way. Wanha Temple was also regarded as the national temple of Xiang Country. It was an incomparably sacred place in the hearts of the people of Xiang Country. At this moment, in the temple, a man wearing a yin-yang martial robe was leaning against the railing with his hands behind his back, looking at the giant elephant Songshan that was like a small mountain in the distance. It was the so-called elephant appreciation. He was standing on the ground, but he felt like he was in the clouds. He didn't cover his face, but his face couldn't be seen clearly. Only his yin-yang martial robe rolled up in one's vision, and there was a substantial sense of majesty flowing around. At this moment, Songshan was lowering his head and eating a big tree. His movements were slow, and there was a kind of peaceful happiness. But suddenly, his huge body knelt down. The elephant's trunk stuck to the ground and didn't move. The big tree was still in his mouth, but he didn't dare to continue swallowing or spitting it out. This giant beast that had a terrifying power in its body, and was regarded as a sacred existence by the people of Xiang Country, didn't even dare to show the slightest sign of resistance. The man wearing the yin-yang martial robe only frowned. "Why are you here?" A calm voice that was filled with boundless majesty came crashing down. "This giant elephant can be rewarded by the people of Jing Country, but the people of Qi Country can't?" The commander of Jing Country's war army, UK, turned his head slightly and saw a man with a short beard and a hairpin already standing beside him. This person was about middle-aged. His face was calm, and he had a kind of vast temperament. Looking into the distance, it was naturally as deep as the sea. "Why are you everywhere?" UK asked bluntly. "Is there no one else in Chi country?" "The wind and rain hit the children, and I have nothing to do anyway," Jiang Mingxiong said casually. "Coming uninvited is a thief," UK said. Jiang Mingxiong smiled faintly. "Those who break the mountain gate are the Emperor's troops. Those who guard the stronghold are bandit. When the Emperor's troops are suppressing bandits, do they still need bandits to invite them?" UK said coldly. "Since ancient times, the Emperor's troops have always come from the center." Jiang Mingxiong said, "Now the East is coming." UK looked at him with a stern gaze. "Do you think that just because you can leave Sword Peak Mountain, you can go anywhere in the world?" Jiang Mingxiong spread out his hands and said, "Might as well try." Ordinary people couldn't see UK's face clearly, but in Jiang Mingxiong's eyes, there was nothing he missed. This was a very young face, thin lips, a high nose and sword-like eyebrows. Time flowed only in his eyes, and didn't leave any traces in other places. UK shook his head, retracted his hostile aura, and looked back at the giant elephant. "So many years have passed, but there is still no change." "Actually, it has changed," Jiang Mingxiong said. UK asked. "I have become stronger," Jiang Mingxiong said lightly. "If Wen Lianmu was here, he would understand." Wang Yiwu's annoying tone, where did he learn it from? UK was stunned for a moment and then laughed. He looked at the giant elephant that was crawling on the ground and raised his chin. "No matter how strong you are, you shouldn't scare a small animal. Look at how you scared it." A terrifying giant beast that was close to the insightful truth level was only a small animal, in UK's words. A little kid that isn't even 20 years old was chased to the heavens and the earth by Yujing people. "I don't see this kind of kindness in you." Jiang Mingxiong also looked at the giant elephant named Songshan, but the words he said were not polite. "What, can a beast make you feel special?" With a glance, the body of the elephant that was as big as a small mountain immediately split open, and fresh blood gushed out. Song Shan's mind was still intact, and he didn't dare to resist, and could only bear it silently. At this time, a hand reached out and blocked in front of Jiang Mingxiong, blocking his line of sight. From UK's clean palm, a faint whistling sound could be heard. There was the howling of the wind, the roaring of the sea, and the rumbling of thunder, but they all gradually disappeared into silence. "This matter has nothing to do with me," UK said with a smile. "It's not appropriate for you to vent your anger on me, right?" As he spoke to Jiang Mingxiong, he sent a thought to the giant elephant Songshan. Receiving support, the giant elephant hurriedly got up and walked away shakily. Although he walked with a momentum that could shake the earth and shake the mountains, every step he took was silent, as if he was afraid of offending the expert behind him. Jiang Mingxiong didn't stop it, and only looked at UK. "Nothing to do with you?" Provoking De Qi's dignity, "and you don't even need a nod of approval from someone of your level. Your Jing country is really amazing." UK retracted his hand and said in a relaxed tone, "A 1,000-year-old tree will inevitably have rotten branches. How can there be no rotten soil in a 10,000-mile area? Jing is an ancient country, and it's undeniable that it's a little slow in some aspect. It doesn't matter. Misconceptions always require time and external forces to correct," Jiang Mingxiong said lightly. "I, De Qi, don't mind providing some help." "Then you'll have to work harder," UK said with a smile. "How is this enough?" "It's very simple," Jiang Mingxiong said straightforwardly. "If you say it's not enough, I, De Qi, will raise the stakes. I'll keep raising the stakes until you say it's enough." "Do you have that many chips?" UK turned to look at him. Jiang Mingxiong smiled. "There's no harm in trying." He had already said this twice, and each time, he was so calm and confident. The confidence of being invincible had already seeped into his bones, and there was no need to brag about it, but it could be seen everywhere. The two perfected lords looked at each other, and it was as if one sea had collided with another. The power to destroy the world was hidden in the calm sea. The Wanha Temple, which occupied a large area and offered sacrifices to the Holy Spirit, could be destroyed in a single thought. To the two perfected lords, this was a very short exchange of glances. However, to the entire Xiong country it was a change of fate. "What do you want?" UK finally asked. "Qi doesn't ask for much, just justice," Jiang Mingxiong said. "Firstly, the Mirror World platform has to publicly apologize to Qi Tianjiao to restore its reputation and compensate for its losses. Secondly, since the ancient Demon Slayer Covenant cannot be used fairly on Mount Yujing, Qi's stargazing tower is willing to worship it. In terms of the righteousness of the human race, Qi has never been inferior to others. These two conditions, each more ridiculous than the other." UK said indifferently, "You know it's impossible." Jiang Mingxiong said, "I enjoy the process of making the impossible possible." UK wanted to mock him, but he had to admit that Jiang Mingxiong was indeed such a person. Finally, he said, "Then I'll wait and see." "Oh, I forgot to remind you," Jiang Mingxiong said, "these two conditions are only for now. It's good to be confident." UK grinned. "Then let's see the results of the Battle of Xingyue Plain. I'll stay here with you for the next few days." Jiang Mingxiong said calmly. "That's not necessary," UK said. "If you have something to do, you can go elsewhere. Don't worry, I won't bully a child." Jiang Mingxiong only said, "If I leave, how will it show that you're at daggers drawn?" UK avoided the topic and suddenly asked, "Is Zhao Xianyang dead or alive?" Jiang Mingxiong shook his head. "I don't know." "Haha." UK laughed. "You don't even dare to give me an answer." Jiang Mingxiong looked at him strangely. "What can you give me?" When Jiang Wang woke up, Zhao Xianyang was gone. "How do you expect an inner mansion stage kid to get an answer from you?" He paused for a moment and asked again, "This is very strange. Is there an internal problem in the Jing Kingdom?" "I don't know if this answer can convince Jingtian Prefecture." UK completely ignored Jiang Mingxiong's probing and shook his head lightly. His tone was still very relaxed. "I'll take it that I've been convinced." Jiang Mingxiong only smiled. "There's only one answer. Whoever isn't satisfied can come find me." Chapter 1347. Xingyue Plain, which was sandwiched between Xiang and Su, had always been a land of treasures. The best resources in the world were, of course, cultivation resources. Xingyue Plain was one of the closest places to the Star Dome in the modern world. This closest was not in the sense of distance, nor did it mean that this plain had the highest terrain and was closest to the sky, but it was the easiest place to establish contact with the distant Star Dome. Relatively speaking, it was easier to build a starlight sacred tower here than in other places. There might be other places in the modern world that were more closely connected to the distant Star Dome, but it could not be bigger than Xingyue Plain. Both Qi and Jing regarded it as their exclusive property. They were in a deadlock and did not allow other forces to touch it. Therefore, although Xiang and Su were close, they could not establish a stronghold here. Although Zheng was not far to the north of Xingyue Plain, they could not take even half a step to the south. This resulted in a peculiar phenomenon in this place. Only a few small forces were active in Xingyue Plain. However, the basis for their survival was the trade of specialties between several countries. Because the most direct trade route, Xingyue Plain, was not open to these countries, Qi and Jing's hegemony could be seen from this. Of course, apart from Qi and Jing's habit of regularly sending cultivators to Xingyue Plain, the monks of Xiankong Temple in the south of Xingyue Plain would also often come here. In addition, these small forces in Xingyue Plain were not necessarily ownerless. Didn't you see that as soon as the war broke out, all the forces on the Star-Moon Plain rolled up and entered the Zheng, the Elephant and the Sioux? It was as natural as going home. Those who only looked for a foothold when the war came to an end were in the minority. This was also a tacit understanding. The preciousness of Xingyue Plain lay in the stars and moons. Its beauty also came from this. The night where one could reach out and pluck the stars had once weaved many beautiful dreams. During the day here, the sky was blue and the clouds were vast and boundless, but now banners were densely packed. The banners gathered like heavy clouds, and thousands of soldiers and horses stood in the plain. 2 general platforms that were dozens of zhang tall faced each other across the battlefield that was filled with people and the battlefield that was filled with baleful energy. On the western general platform, the leader was the pillar state of Xiang, Lian Jingji. He was standing with his sword in hand, overlooking the battlefield. A giant elephant that was 3 zhang tall and more than 4 zhang long stood in front of the general platform. It was clad in heavy armor and looked very majestic. Even their trunks were covered with leather armor with sharp thorns. On the eastern general platform, the Grand Marshal of the Sioux country, Fang Yu, sat firmly in his chair, his face expressionless. For many years, Lian Jingji and Fang Yu seemed to have been confronting each other like this. They had heard of each other's reputations and imagined themselves as opponents countless times. Of course, there were also some secret confrontations, but when it came to the actual battle, they would only face each other. Because this was not their battlefield, this was not their war. The real battlefield was in front of the general platforms, between the east and the west, a vast battlefield that encompassed nearly half of Star-Moon Plain. Or to put it more bluntly, it was the young Tianjiao commanders of the 2 forces. It looked like Lian Jingji had made the same decision as Fang Yu. He had also taken out 50,000 main forces and let the young Tianjiao from Jing Kingdom's camp lead them, but how could the wills of the 2 commanders be so similar? Therefore, this still carried out the wills of the 2 forces. It tore apart the fog of the dispute between Xiang and Sioux country, and saw through the facade of the confrontation between Lian Jingji and Fang Yu. The truth of this war was that the young geniuses of the 2 hegemonic nations commanded the soldiers of the Xiang and Sioux nations, and used the lives of these soldiers to temper themselves and prove themselves. How cruel was that for the Xiang and Sioux nations! Those soldiers who were in the middle of the war and didn't know the truth and thought that they were fighting for their country didn't know whether they were lucky or unlucky. The real war was in front of the front lines. The young Tianjiao from the 2 forces were confronting each other. The soldiers in the middle of the front lines and the rear lines, as well as the soldiers guarding the general platforms, were actually just positions to replenish the soldiers in the front lines. This was the strange part of this war, and also the embarrassing part for the 2 generals. Of course, their embarrassment was not important. Even if they were Lian Jingji and Fang Yu. Under the iron hooves of the overlords, they were all ants. The Qi camp had 10 battalions, and each battalion had 5,000 soldiers. Among these 5,000 soldiers, there were about 100 transcendent cultivators who were the core of all the battalions. Their cultivation levels were all below the reaching heaven state. Even the main force of the Sioux country's army was only this strong. The 10 battalions were divided into 2 cavalry troops and 8 infantry troops. The 2 cavalry troops were led by Bao Buozhao and Chao Yu. It was unknown how they convinced Xie Baoshu. In short, Xie Baoshu led the infantry troops like his younger brothers of the Inner Mansion state. Time was tight and the soldiers were all from the Sioux country. They weren't familiar with the Sioux country, so they used the formations commonly used by the Sioux country's army. The formation of the cavalry troops was called sharp arrow, while the formation of the infantry troops was called fish scale. They were both offensive formations. No matter if it was Chao Yu, who was considered a veteran general in the army, or Wang Yiwu, who grew up in the army, or Li Longchuan and Cheng Gungxing, who were born in the families of famous generals, none of them tried to change the formations. This was the performance of knowing the soldiers well. On a real battlefield, stability was the most important thing. Lin Xian temporarily replaced Jiang Wang, who hadn't arrived yet. His formation was right next to Cheng Gungxing's. The war is about to start. When will Jiang Qingyang arrive? He couldn't help but ask. He's already on his way. Cheng Gungxing said calmly. You can lead the army and fight for a while. It's also an opportunity for you. He was on the battlefield, so he couldn't contact Jiang Wang immediately. However, he had already sent people to the Taishu Corner Tower in Tianfu City to enter the Taishu Fantasy Land and inform Jiang Wang. Jiang Wang should be on his way. Lin Xian held his saber and looked forward. He didn't speak anymore. Cheng Gungxing was right. To be able to lead the army alone in Xingyue Plain was an opportunity for him. He was only worried that Jiang Wang would arrive too late and be unfamiliar with the army, so he wouldn't be able to take advantage of the formations. In a head-on battle like this, it was a competition of strength in all aspects. The wind blew the banners, and the 100,000 people were silent. On the opposite side of Qi's camp, the Jing country's camp was divided into 20 teams. They were equal to 1 battalion on the other side. The two sides got into their respective formations on Xingyue Plain. The banners fluttered and the evil energy surged. They were just waiting for the bugle horn to sound, and the most tragic battle would begin. But at this tense moment where swords were drawn and bows were drawn, Bao Buozhao was the first to turn his head, followed by Chao Yu, Xie Baoshu, and Wang Yiwu. They were surprised to see 2 figures coming from the north, one in front and one behind. They were approaching the battlefield at high speed from the north to the south. Who dared to cross the battlefield? Did they lose their minds? The 2 camps of Jing and Qi were fighting. Who dared to intrude? If the battle was in the heat of the battle, the intruders with unknown origins would be strangled by both sides. However, this was the time when the battle was about to start. Therefore, the 100,000 soldiers in front of Qi Jing's camp, as well as the Tianjiao soldiers in the middle of the army, saw the 2 figures flying toward them. He could only watch helplessly as those 2 people flew in a straight line and approached him. He felt a huge sense of absurdity. The person in front was a woman. She wore a faceless mask and only wore thin clothes to cover her body. The endless spring scenery couldn't be hidden, and more than 30% of her body was exposed. The one flying behind her was wearing a green robe and holding a sword. He was proud and confident, and his posture was natural and unrestrained. Chapter 1348. Yan Zi was stupefied. She had already used 8 of her treasures, and used almost all the methods she could think of, but she still couldn't get rid of that murderous star. She didn't want to go through Xingyue Plain, but she was really forced into a corner. She knew about the war in Xingyue Plain. She thought that after reaching Xingyue Plain, she might be able to use the evil energy to block Jiang Wang's tracking technique. Then she could use a secret technique to escape. She didn't expect that as soon as she entered Xingyue Plain, that murderous star surnamed Jiang seemed to have taken an aphrodisiac and became more energetic. She didn't even have a chance to turn around. She plunged into the battlefield and flew straight under the gaze of hundreds of thousands of people. As a notorious human devil, she couldn't fly to the left or the right. She believed that no matter which camp it was, they wouldn't mind killing her. Therefore, she could only step on the so-called middle line and continue to move forward between the 2 opposing armies. She hoped that no one would see her and let her fly away quietly from this battlefield. But the weight of the gaze was heavy. Who are these 2 people? Pei Hongjiu, the Tianjiao of Jing Kingdom, couldn't help but ask. He was the young master of the Pei family of Jing Kingdom. He was a first-class figure in terms of talent. His uncle was the commander of the disaster army, Pei Xinghe. During the Yellow River War, Jing Kingdom abandoned the Inner Mansion Field and the Outer Mansion Field. A Tianjiao of the Inner Mansion Field like him didn't go to the Viewing River platform. Wang Kuan, who was not far from him, answered, "If I'm not wrong, it should be the unmasked human devil and Jiang Wang." Compared with the handsome Pei Hongjiu, Wang Kuan's appearance was relatively mediocre, but he looked honest and reliable, the kind of appearance that people wouldn't be wary of. Wang Kuan worked at the Mirror World platform, so his information was very reliable. Pei Hongjiu couldn't help but raise his guard. Jiang Wang was chasing the unmasked human devil. In the Death Valley, he fought against 4 human devils of the Outer Mansion Field alone and killed 3 of them. This time, no one doubted him. Even the Tianjiao of Jing Kingdom, who didn't trust Jiang Wang the most, couldn't deceive their eyes at this moment. As for Qi's side, there was no need to mention it. Ordinary people might not recognize Jiang Wang, but the more they lived in Tianjiao, the more they would remember Jiang Wang's appearance. As a Tianjiao of the same generation, Jiang Wang's name could not be avoided. But because the 2 armies were in a stalemate, no one dared to act rashly. Even Cheng Gungxing, Li Longchuan, and Yan Fu did not have the intention to help, because in such a tense situation, a single move could cause the entire battlefield to explode. At that time, Jiang Wang, who was at the center of the battlefield, would be hard-pressed to ensure his safety. Of course, the more important reason was that he trusted Jiang Wang's ability. Yan Zi was stupefied. Jiang Wang was also confused. If he could, of course, he would want to kill the swallow as soon as possible. However, the unmasked devilman's name was not exaggerated at all. He had all kinds of strange supernatural abilities that were impossible to guard against. Although Yan Zi's frontal attack was not as good as his, he had many tricks up his sleeve when it came to escaping. The advantage of the Heaven Ascension Immortal technique was its flexibility. It was not outstanding when it came to long-distance travel. After all, Yan Zi was 1 realm higher. If not for Virtuous Green Cloud's ample reserves, he would have been left behind many times. Relying on the fact that Heaven Ascension did not consume much Tao energy, he was able to chase after Yan Zi all the way here. Yan Zi plunged into Xingyue Plain. Of course, he would not abandon this old place. Relying on his familiarity with Xingyue Plain and the omnipresent astral power that communicated with the fiery bone lotus, he was getting closer and closer. Cheng Gungxing's subordinates did not find him, and he did not have time to read the letters in the great illusionary realm. But of course, he knew that there was a war going on in Xingyue Plain. However, Xingyue Plain was so vast that he and the unmasked devilman were just 2 drops in the ocean. They should not be able to cause any waves. While he was accumulating starlight in Xingyue Plain, he chased after the unmasked devilman. After killing the 5th devilman, he would see if he could join the battlefield of Xingyue Plain. Perhaps he could even act as a divine hand and seal the victory of the war. His plan was perfect, but the changes were very strange. Flying across the middle realm where the 2 armies were facing each other was something he had never thought of. However, since Yan Zi was running this way, he could not let him go. Jiang Wang could already feel the weight of the gazes. Under the gaze of nearly 100,000 gazes, even his powerful spirit could not operate. He had no choice but to temporarily cut off his perception of the gazes of others. This scene was not something an ordinary person could imagine. Once there were more than 10,000 people, it would be boundless. The army of nearly 100,000 was in various military formations. Some were like arrows, some were like big fish. Armored and equipped weapons stood in great numbers. Killing intent soared to the sky, stirring up the clouds on both sides. Even the sky seemed to lower by half. Yet, he was chasing after the unmasked devilman. He was flying on the only peaceful line. It was really exciting. As if he was walking on the tip of a blade. Perhaps Yen Zi hoped that this part of the journey would be over quickly, but Jiang Wang did not plan to continue the chase. He was not used to placing his hopes of victory on the unknown, on the fact that no one was causing trouble on both sides of the battlefield. It was true that the Devil Man was full of evil, and everyone had the right to punish him. His pursuit of the Devil Man should not be obstructed. This was almost a kind of public order and good custom. However, if someone from Jing Kingdom's camp secretly attacked him, he might not be able to tell. The fiery bone lotus kept absorbing the scattered star power. It was not as efficient during the day as it was during the night, especially under the suppression of the termination energy. However, after chasing for so long, he had finally accumulated some. Jiang Wang shouted, "The Devil Man is full of evil. Today, he shall be punished." His voice shook the entire Xingyue plain. Everyone could hear him. Whoever interfered with him at this moment would be in cahoots with the Devil Man. Jiang Wang gently twisted his sword and poured all of his star power into it. The 5 prefectures rumbled as they operated. Immediately, the 5 prefectures shone at the same time. The light of supernatural powers appeared. His eyes shone with the light of immortality. His body was surrounded by flowing fire. His frost cloak fluttered. His sword surged with starlight. Under everyone's gazes, the sword immortal arrived at Xingyue Plain. The secret treasures of Starfire, Wind Chasing, Wind Gate and Cape were all opened. Yen Zi, who was flying at the front, seemed to have sensed danger. She suddenly turned around. Her voice was extremely ferocious. "You've pushed me too far." He reached his hand out and tore out a bloody face. This Devil Man, who cared a lot about her feminine charms, no longer had any misgivings at the moment of life and death. The thin clothes on her body were directly torn apart. A pair of gray bat wings drilled out from her back and spread out. On the bat-like wings there were patterns shaped like a ghost's face. Just a glance was enough to make one feel disgusted. Black ghost fog accompanied her body. There seemed to be countless evil spirits hidden within it. She immediately wailed. Actually, Zheng Fei, Li Shouzi, and Yen Zi's true strength were on par. However, Zheng Fei and Li Shouzi were more ostentatious. That was why they were ranked first. Such a terrifying side was enough to prove her strength as the unmasked Devil Man. It even made people worry for Jiang Wang. How could an inner palace cultivator kill such a Devil Man? However, this worry was obviously unnecessary. Because of that sword. That was the ultimate sword in the state of the Sword Immortal. People had heard many legends about the Sword Immortal defeating the Emperor of Hell on the river viewing platform. However, not everyone had the fortune to see this sword with their own eyes. When it appeared in front of your eyes, it was like an immortal pushing down a mountain that supported the heavens. Using it as a sword, the sword crashed into the world. The unmasked Devil Man screamed. The ghost face bat wings on her back revealed a ferocious expression. However, it was all to no avail. However, the ghost's cry disappeared. However, the ghost fog disappeared. As a result, the bat wings broke and the bloody face collapsed. Yen Zi's life force, which was still terrifyingly powerful, instantly fell to the bottom. This was for slaying a Devil Man in front of an army of 10,000. Chapter 1349. As for Jiang Wang's sword, it destroyed the ghost fog around the swallow, broke the blood mask, and broke the bat wings. It was as easy as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The sharpness of this sword shone in front of tens of thousands of troops. The 100,000 troops of Qi Jing and Qi Jing could see it clearly. This sword separated the east from the west and ran from the north to the south. It killed the demonic man who could be considered a powerhouse even in the outer realm. Everyone was shocked. On Qi's side, people finally understood what Lin Xian meant by the strongest fighting force in the inner house. They understood what it meant to exceed the limits of the inner mansion. If it was like this today, how cool would it be when it was time to kill all evildoers, cut their flesh and behead them? Lin Xian was very lucky to be able to witness that battle. Xie Baoshu was expressionless, but he felt sour and uncomfortable. Although his uncle Xie An had urged him to reconcile with Jiang Wang as soon as possible when he was in Linzi, he had his own pride and many grievances. Wendinglin, whom he admired, was engaged to Yen Fu. He went to bully Jiang Wang, but he was bullied several times instead. He was lying in the imperial hospital, and was greeted by people. He was blocked on the street and was ridiculed. He was an outer realm Tianjiao. His name was not as good as Jiang Wang's. His title was not as good as Jiang Wang's, and his official position was not as good as Jiang Wang's. There were many reasons. He was angry with Jiang Wang, but he couldn't do anything to him. He was so angry that he lost 7 or 8 pounds. This time, he came to Xingyue Plain to make a contribution and ask for a title. He had even thought about it. When he made a contribution and received a title, he would provoke Jiang Wang on the street the next time he met him on Linzi Street. He would beat him up until the whole city was in turmoil. Let the world know. Linzi still had him, Xie Baoshu. But today he suddenly realized that, if they really fought, he might not win. He was suffocating. He was itching all over. But he could only restrain himself. In Jing Country's camp, a young Tianjiao with a green gourd hanging from his waist said, "If the war starts, we must kill this person first." This voice rang in the ears of several Tianjiao at the same time. The person who said these words was Su San, who was known for being a playboy and a playboy. He was thinking purely from the perspective of winning or losing the war. It was too easy for a Tianjiao like Jiang Wang, who was invincible, to gain an advantage on the battlefield. If this issue was not resolved as soon as possible, it would be difficult to grasp the variables of the Tianjiao conflict. Wang Kuan, who was in charge of the Mirror World platform, immediately replied, "Brother Su's words make sense. If the two armies fight together and kill the most famous Jiang Qingyang first, it would be the best way to seize the advantage." The sword slashing down on Xingyue Plain caused ripples not only in the front army. Even the eastern and western general platforms at the ends of the plain of stars and moon could not ignore this resplendent sword. Although it was only the power of the inner palace, it was already peerless. "Did you see it?" Xiang Country's pillar, Lian Jingji, asked. Not far behind him stood his daughter, Lian Yuchan, who was also the most talented cultivator of Xiang Country's younger generation. Now, she only had the position of a personal guard, guarding the general platform. Lian Jingji brought her along this time only for her to observe. "I saw it," Lian Yuchan, who had an oval face and an extremely delicate face, said. She then added, "I saw it very clearly." She looked like a person from a painting, but she wore a helmet and armor, and her murderous aura was cold. Lian Jingji said indifferently, "When you can stab with this sword, I can take off my armor with peace of mind." Lian Yuchan pursed her lips and said nothing, but the two swords hanging from her waist, both swords hummed. East and west faced each other, each with their own ripples. On the eastern general platform, Fang Yu, who commanded Su Country's army, couldn't help but lean forward slightly. "Is this Jiang Wang?" "This is Jiang Wang," Madame Shidu said coldly. "With such strength, he deserves to be famous. Unexpectedly, none of Rong's young people can match him. He's already publicly acknowledged as the #1 inner palace since ancient times. His opponents won't be limited to his peers." Fang Yu shook his head and said meaningfully, "I'm afraid that in a few years, we old guys will be the ones to compete with him." "The few years you speak of?" Madame Shidu suddenly turned her head halfway and looked at the front of the battlefield, her face aghast. Fang Yu's face also suddenly paled. They all sensed that a terrifying power had descended. At the position where the two great Tianjiao camps faced each other, At the place where Jiang Wang's sword slashed the unmasked devilman's life force, that was a clear so-called line. The unmasked devilman's bloody face disintegrated, her bat wings were broken, and her entire body began to shrink. At the location of her heart, a silver-white pellet suddenly leaped out. In a split second, silver light exploded, and 10,000 strong rays of light shone. Everyone who was watching this place was fiercely stabbed, and they had no choice but to close their eyes. Many soldiers even had blood flowing from their eyes. In the eyes of the transcendent cultivators, the silver-white pellet leaped up and turned into a silver-colored divine dragon amidst the sudden burst of light. It coiled around the ground and swept up the unmasked devilman as it soared into the sky. In the end, only a silver-white light could be seen, shining in the sky. It was the brightest in the sky, even overshadowing the sunlight. It became smaller and smaller, farther and farther away. The silver-white light gradually became clearer and closer. It first went to the sky, then turned back from the sky, until, in the eyes of the people, the light was so clear that they could see its specific shape. It was a long sword without a handle that had already taken shape. The tip of the sword was pointing downward, and it was falling in the direction of Jiang Wang. There was a sword cry in the sky. It was like thunder from the ninth heaven. The bright white sword light flew, and with the long sword as the center, it spread across the entire sky. It looked like silver lightning dancing wildly. The sky was a piece of paper that could be painted wantonly, and the sword energy was a jumping, never-ending bookmark. The sword energy burst forth like a net of electricity covering the sky. In the terrifying screams, it became more and more concentrated, and more ostentatious. Thus, a sea of sword light was formed. The sea of sword light above the sky. It fell into the human world. The bright white sea of sword light occupied the sky and poured down mercilessly. The termination energy produced by the confrontation of 100,000 soldiers was suppressed by dozens of feet. Only the endless sword light was falling. It was like the sky was falling. The sky was falling, and the whole sky was pressing down. A hole opened in the sky, and the sea of sword light was like the water of the Milky Way, pouring down with Jiang Wang as the center. At the same time, it also covered the battlefield of close to 100,000 people. What kind of powerhouse would kill without saying a word? Jiang Wang immediately thought of Yu Beidu's description of the number 1 devilman, Yan Chunwei. Even Yu Beidu, one of the strongest perfected masters in the world, could only borrow life blood to revive when facing Yan Chunwei's flying sword. Let alone Jiang Wang. When he killed the beheader devilman, Yan Chunwei didn't make a move. When he killed the 10,000 fiend devilman and the flesh-slicing devilman, Yan Chunwei didn't make a move. Presumably, the number 1 devilman's line of sight didn't fall on these lower-ranked devilmen. That was why he came alone to chase and take off his mask. He didn't expect to poke a hornet's nest. It could only be said that he was lucky. Sometimes, fate liked to play some nasty jokes. What kind of a strange scene was this? The sea of sword light poured down from the sky, and the bright white sword light was like waves and tides, like a waterfall. I think it's the Milky Way falling from the ninth heaven. Who was doing this? Was it not a god? This was such a terrifying sword. Jiang Wang's mountain-toppling sword just now was like a water plant under this sea of sword light, soft and powerless. It was weak in comparison. Anyone on this battlefield could only see the sea of sword energy, and there was nowhere to run. No matter which country's Tianjiao, no matter which country's soldiers. Under such a sea of sword light, they could only feel deep despair. This was a gap that couldn't be closed, a natural moat that couldn't be crossed. Who could fill the natural moat? When the sky fell, who could survive? At the juncture of life and death, who could be fearless? At this moment, Jiang Wang was standing in midair. He had just killed the beheader devilman, and he didn't have time to calm down before he encountered this sword. Although he was bathed in fire, and had 5 prefectures shining at the same time, he was like everyone else covered by this sea of sword light, completely without the power to resist. Under the falling sea, there were no ants. Thousands were nothing, tens of thousands were nothing, and 100,000 were still nothing but ants. No one could stop them. Those who did would die. But Jiang Wang went up. He didn't say a word. He just lifted his sword and went up. He advanced alone toward the sea of sword light. This was his only choice at the juncture of life and death. He never had any other choice. The frost cloak behind him fluttered, the flames around him swayed, and the immortal golden light in his eyes seemed to solidify into a divine sculpture. The green clouds dispersed one by one, and 5 lumps of blazing light were embedded in his body. He knew he couldn't escape, but he didn't wait for death. If death was a fixed ending, if he really faced the falling sky. He also wanted this falling sky to see his sword. Jiang Wang's sword in the air, and he was a person with a capital letter. The word person stood between heaven and earth. Chang Xiangxi trembled endlessly. He thrust his sword toward the sky. He faced the sea of swords alone with his sword. This was a young man less than 20 years old charging toward an unparalleled power. This was an inner residence cultivator bravely challenging the power of the falling sky. On the battlefield where tens of thousands of horses were silent. In the silence of 100,000 troops. Only he charged back at Gao Qiong so resolutely and dazzlingly. This scene would not be forgotten by the people present 10 or 100 years later. Those who still wielded their swords when there was no hope were true heroes in the world. Suddenly, a roar resounded through heaven and earth. Jiang Qingyang, where do you want to go? Cheng Gongxing will go with you. In the army formation of Qi's camp, a fat body suddenly swelled and turned into a giant of 15 to 16 feet tall. It shook heaven and earth, and its roar was like thunder. It leaped into the sky and charged toward the sea of swords. The appearance of this sea of swords was too coincidental, and its performance was too strong. Facing life and death on a narrow path, suddenly seeing the power of the falling sky. This was a natural mote of strength that could not be overcome by intelligence. At this time, everything that could be used could not be used to deal with this sea of sword. Cheng Gongxing was extremely smart, so he knew that this was impossible. He simply gave up all thoughts and gave up on the impulse of his heart. He manifested the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth and rose into the sky. Jiang Wang is going to die, and I am going to die too. A black-armored figure carrying a heavy sword followed beside him without saying a word. She would go wherever Cheng Gongxing went. She did not ask for the reason, and did not care about life and death. If she wanted to cut a mountain, she would cut a mountain. If she wanted to cut a sea of swords, she would cut a sea of swords. Even if it was useless, even if there was no corpse left. She was with Cheng Gongxing. Everyone, get into formation. Listen to my orders. Gather at the place where the arrows landed. Li Longchuan, who had a jade belt wrapped around his forehead, flipped his hand, and the Qiushan bow was pulled to a full moon. With a move of the bowstring, 10 arrows flew out and landed in 10 different positions, corresponding to the 10 camps on Qi's side. I will lead everyone to death. He wanted to unify the power of the army formation in the shortest time possible and fight to the death. With the reputation of the Marquis as proof, almost all the Tianjiao in Qi's camp gave up on the control of the army formation and handed it over to Li Longchuan to unify. Everyone knows Menli. This sentence was never empty talk. On the other hand, Yan Fu didn't say anything impassioned. Even on this fierce battlefield, he still looked like a gentle and tranquil noble young master. With just a wave of his left hand, 8 four-winged ink warriors rose into the air with sabers. With a grab of his right hand, a handful of talismans were already in his grasp. He even took the time to throw a storage box into the hands of Lin Jie, who was beside him. He only said, Use it as you wish before flying into the sky. Tianjiao Linjie was stunned for a moment. He was a little dizzy from being smashed by this box full of talismans, but for some reason, he was already holding a long saber in his hand, and he couldn't help but fly into the sky. He had learned countless rules of legalism, but none of them could explain his impulse at this moment. Perhaps people who were about to die were bound to do stupid things? There was a voice that sounded unpleasant to the ears. How can you let the younger generation monopolize the beauty? But the eldest son of Count Shuofeng, Bao Buozhao, stood in mid-air and touched the space between his eyebrows with a finger. He immediately opened the heaven's eye. The heaven's eye opened twice. One eye was clear, and the other eye was for heaven's punishment. From the vertical eye between his eyebrows, a divine light shot into the sky. It was the heaven's punishment, shining sword sea. Of course, it was impossible for heaven's punishment to penetrate such a terrifying sea of sword aura, but how could he, Bao Buozhao, let a group of younger Tianjiao die in front of him? If word got back to Linzi, who knew how that disgusting younger brother of his would ridicule him, Yonggenzuan looked down on this battlefield. He, Bao Buozhao, came here to set an example for the young Tianjiao of the eastern region. He was already a step slower than Jiang Wang, so he couldn't be slower than others. Chao Yu, who came from a military background, was even more straightforward. She swung her ponytail, which was like the edge of a saber. She had already soared into the sky. With scarlet eyes and a green face, she leaped in front of the ghost and hid her peerlessly sharp long saber behind her back. She faced the sea of swords and charged forward. She was only waiting for the moment to strike with her saber to open a path for this thieving heaven. Xie Baoshu, who was also in the outer realm of Tianjiao, swung his giant brush like a beam. His hair was disheveled as he sang wildly. The heavens didn't cut off the suffering of the human world. This suffering should also be known by the heavens. At this point, how could he let the surnamed Jiang steal the limelight? He used the mirror to control the wild song and used his strongest Taoist technique. He swung his giant brush from bottom to top, drawing the sky and directly facing the sea of swords. He wanted to write his own ending. No one was willing to fall behind. Especially Lei Zhanqian, who had an arrogant personality. He lost to Jiang Wang in terms of strength and cultivation to Jiang Wang. How could he lose to Jiang Wang in terms of courage? At the critical moment of life and death, no one dared to throw a punch. Therefore, he threw a punch with a sea of thunder and used the sea of thunder and lightning to collide with the sea of sword energy. Although the gap was huge, like a pool of water against a vast ocean, his fist momentum was majestic and did not show any weakness. The Nine Heavens Thunder Amplification technique used thunder punishment to replace heaven's punishment. After completely controlling the thunder world, his punch was the real. When a person's killing intent is released, heaven and earth will be turned upside down. Lin Xian, Tian Chang, Wen Lianmu and even Gao Zhu, all the Tianjiao in Qi's camp, at the moment of life and death, were stimulated by Jiang Qingyang's figure and rushed into the sky one after another. No one hesitated, no one retreated. They wanted to contribute to the battlefield and compete with Jing country's Tianjiao. They more or less had some ambition. Therefore, the Tianjiao collided with the sea of swords. They dared to hold up the sky with their arms. Among all the Tianjiao who followed closely behind Jiang Wang, only Wang Yiwu was the most arrogant. He clenched his fist and faced the sea of swords. He couldn't even see the face of the sword master, so he didn't know who he was. But when he threw out a punch, the evil energy boiled in midair, condensing into an uncountable number of soldiers and horses, and the blade patterns on their armor were all specific. Then, thousands of soldiers and horses charged into the sky. One person against 10,000 soldiers. He only said, "If you don't die today, I will kill you in the future." To be able to use such a sword move that could collapse the sky and directly topple the world with the sea of sword energy, he must be an existence that stood at the peak of transcendent being. Although the Tianjiao people charged bravely, everyone only wanted to fight to the death. Only Wang Yiwu dared to say such arrogant words to the expert behind the sea of swords. He was really arrogant to the extreme. His performance was different from the Tianjiao on the Qi camp side. On the Jing camp side, as soon as the bright white sword light turned around, a calm voice entered the ears of all the Tianjiao. Now, listen to my orders. When the sea of sword energy poured down, almost at the same time, the voice said, "This is the power of a perfected cultivator. There is no need to be brave. General Yu is in the Wanha temple and can arrive here in a moment. What we need to do is to delay as much time as possible. Everyone, listen to my orders. Just use the array formation that was rehearsed last night. Su San leads 5 troops to Tianjiao, Wang Kuan leads 4 troops to Dui, Pei Hongjiu leads the army." However, in an instant, everyone's positions were clearly arranged, and not a single person was left out. The situation of the entire battlefield and the nearly 50,000 soldiers seemed to be in this person's mind. Once his order was given, no one objected. Because the person who spoke at this time was now recognized as the strongest outer sect in the Jing kingdom, Chen Xuan from Penglai Island. Following his command, the 20 teams of Jing would quickly move. Each team rushed to a designated position, and in an instant, they formed a simple and stable defensive formation. With the combined strength of 50,000 people, they hoped to survive for one more breath when the sea of sword energy poured down. Even if they could buy one more breath of time, it was very likely to be the difference between life and death. The sea of sword energy poured down from the 9 heavens. These young Tianjiao, regardless of camp or country, did not give up. It could be said that they all displayed the charm that Tianjiao should have. However, whether it was the Tianjiao of the Qi camp that chose to attack or the Tianjiao of the Jing kingdom camp that chose to defend in the face of this vast and majestic sea of sword energy, they were in fact equally powerless. 1,000 people were ants, 10,000 people were ant. Waiting for death was an ant. How could they not be ants if they struggled? This meant that they would die if they faced it head-on, evaded it, escaped it, and fought it. Only a perfected cultivator could control a perfected cultivator. Those below the Tao evolution stage were all dust. The sea of sword energy roared and surged endlessly. The bright white sword energy was like the waves of the Milky Way, as if it poured down from the 9 heavens into the mortal world. It seemed that this Milky Way was about to extinguish the ants, especially Jiang Wang, who was holding a sword at the front. He was almost less than 100 feet away from the sea of sword energy and could reach it in an instant. Suddenly, a figure stood in front of everyone. He had a short beard, hairpin, and a martial attire made of unknown material. He was not particularly tall, but standing in the sky, he was like a pillar that supported the sky. The violent wind that came down from the sea of sword energy could not even lift the corner of his clothes. Behind him was a group of Tianjiao charging forward. In front of him was the roaring sea of sword energy. His voice was calm, but there was endless majesty in it. Today I have seen the Tianjiao of the eastern region fight hard. My heart is comforted. I will use this fist to cheer you on. Thus, he punched the sky. At this moment, in this situation, this person could only be De Qi's military god, Jiang Mengxiong. His fist was simple, but the peaks of his fist were disorderly and picturesque. It rose up like a soaring dragon, like a towering mountain that rose up on the vast earth by pulling up the veins of the earth. It had the momentum of crashing into the heavenly gate. When the fist moved, the terrifying fist wind had already swept across the sky, and the clouds within 10,000 miles were lifted up. The whistling fist wind rapidly expanded like a mountain range, and it went toward half of the sea of sword energy. With Jiang Wang as the boundary, the sky within the range of Qi's camp was lifted up by Jiang Mengxiong's fist. On Jing country's side, the sea of sword energy was still falling. Sigh. You are too stingy. Amidst the helpless Sai, UK, who was wearing a yin and yang martial attire, suddenly appeared and pulled out his sword. He spoke casually, appeared casually, and pulled out his sword casually. However, a ray of sword energy immediately soared into the sky and turned into a long rainbow that traversed the sky. The sword energy continued to soar and rose into a cloud of sword energy. The layers of clouds were connected, and the sword energy became a sea of clouds that rushed toward the sky. This sea of clouds firmly blocked the other half of the sea of sword energy that was falling down. With Jiang Wang as the boundary, the half that faced the majestic sea of sword energy was Jiang Mengxiong, and the other half was Yu Quebec. Jiang Mengxiong deliberately controlled his strength and only accurately blocked half of the sea of sword energy. In fact, it was more strenuous and time-consuming than facing the entire sea of sword energy with one punch. However, he was obviously enjoying it. He would rather consume more strength than give UK the chance to sit and watch the show. It was none of his business. At this moment, seeing that UK had finally made a move, his fist abruptly thrust upwards. He looked up at the sea of sword energy and shouted angrily, "How dare you attack the Tianjiao of Deqi? Yan Chunhui, are you here to die today?" Boom! The mountain range of fist wind collided with the sea of sword energy. The whole world dimmed. The scene was as if heaven and earth had merged, and the chaos had suddenly returned. At least in Xingyue Plain, it felt like the end of the world had arrived. It was indescribable and indescribable. The terrifying power swept over everything, including the people's perception. Until, boom! Then, they heard a loud sound that sounded like a heavenly drum. The brief dimness was torn apart. Then, they saw that the bright white sea of surging sword energy moved a few steps upward at a speed visible to the naked eye. The sky, that had collapsed, was pushed back. This was Jiang Mengxiong, the true lord of Tao evolution. This was Jiang Mengxiong's fist. Who wouldn't be moved? "Who are you?" An old voice sounded. "Yan Chunhui. Who is he?" These two questions came one after another. He was like an old man who hadn't woken up and was talking in a daze. The sea of sword qi that covered the sky suddenly dissipated. It was as if the mythical scene of the sky collapsing and the heavenly river flowing backward was just an illusion. The sky was clear, and the clouds were clear, and thousands of miles were peaceful. When people looked into the distance again, they only saw a silver-white light spot that flashed in the sky and disappeared. Chapter 1350. The first man, Yan Chunhui, suddenly appeared and swung his sword without saying a word, covering the battlefield of nearly 100,000 soldiers. After facing Jiang Mengxiong for a while, he suddenly left. It was as if he did as he pleased. If he didn't care about the deterrence of the overlords, then there were no rules in the world that could restrain him. Deqi's military god, Jiang Mengxiong, and Jingbajia's leader, UK, didn't seem to have any intention of chasing after him. Ha 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 ha! UK suddenly laughed so loudly that his shoulders shook. His sword was divided into two colors, black and white. One side was as black as ink, and the other was as white as snow. The sword guard was also a taiji diagram. The white side was closer to the black blade, and the black side was closer to the white blade. The entire sword gave people a complex feeling that it contained everything and separated yin and yang. He casually returned it to its scabbard and disappeared. He looked at Jiang Mengxiong and laughed for a long time. Ha ha ha! You punched the sky and spoke arrogantly. Others only asked, "Who are you?" Ha 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 ha! He forgot about me, which can only mean that he took the wrong path. Jiang Mengxiong said expressionlessly, "Shouldn't we get out of the way? This war isn't over yet." Of course. This is a round between young people. UK smiled. Without saying anything else, he disappeared with a single step. Jiang Mingxiong also took a step forward and disappeared into the air. He didn't even leave a glance. Both sides showed that they were very confident in Tianjiao. It could be said that they had grasped the scale of their high-level combat power not to interfere with this war. Everyone in Xingyue Plain could only listen to the conversation between the two true sovereigns. After they left, the people seemed to be able to act independently. But after experiencing the earth-shattering and life-threatening scene, it was difficult for the Tianjiao to immediately return to the mood of confrontation between the two camps. The Tianjiao of Jing country linked up with small formations and formed a large defensive formation. The Tianjiao of Qi country followed behind Jiang Wang and rushed into the sky. The army was temporarily guided by Li Longchuan's feather arrows and formed a formation. The Tianjiao of both sides looked at each other. They really didn't have the will to fight. It was like two ants, confronting each other aggressively and about to fight to the death. He indeed had the will to fight to the death. But suddenly, a person walked over and stomped on them. The two ants almost died. Although that person had walked far away, the ants still had a lingering fear. The two sides looked at each other, and the strange atmosphere lasted for a while. Clang, clang, clang. At the same time, buzzing sounds rang out from the platforms on both the east and west sides. Striking the mace with a mallet was the sound of a gong, the sound of troops retreating. Probably even Jing Ji and Fang Yu understood the morale of the army and knew that it would be difficult to fight today. It could even be said that they probably had similar feelings in front of Dao-favored experts like Yan Chunwei, UK, and Jiang Mingxiong. What difference was there between the Xiang Empire's great generals and the Su Empire's great generals? Both sides of Tianjiao reorganized their troops and returned to their camp. Neither side said anything. Today's encounter really made everyone's mood complicated. They didn't even say things like, "I'll break your formation tomorrow," or "I'll take your dog's head." Of course, the gazes that fell on Jiang Wang didn't lessen. First, he killed the human devil in front of 10,000 soldiers. Then, he was the first to charge into the sea of swords. He was really dazzling, and no one could ignore him. Qingyang. Chung Gungxing withdrew his lawful embodiment of heaven and earth, and waved his hand, even using Chongshuan's power. "Quickly come over." Jiang Wang withdrew from his sword immortal state and returned his sword to its sheath. Following the gravitational force, he gently floated to his side. He said with some amusement, "Your Chongshuan's power isn't strong enough. Later, we'll have to train more." Chung Gungxing acted as if he hadn't heard him. Training more was definitely necessary, but there was absolutely no we. At this moment, the heavy armor 14 was on his left, and Jiang Qingyang was on his right. He led the way in the middle and swaggered towards the Qi camp. He had the posture of sweeping away thousands of troops. It was really imposing. Li Longchuan put away the Qiushan Bao, flew over, and said with a chuckle, "Why is our #1 inner mansion in history becoming more and more handsome?" Ahaha. Jiang Wang maintained his modesty. "That depends on who I'm compared to." 14 glared at him with dissatisfaction. "I mean compared to yesterday," Jiang Wang hurriedly explained. Yan Fu handed the control mechanism to Lin Jie and motioned for him to put away the 8 ink warriors. At the same time, he handed over a handful of talismans that he hadn't had time to use and told him to put them away. These things of inestimable value were simply a pile of shiny primordial stones. But because he found it troublesome, he casually packed them up for Lin Jie as if he wasn't worried about the other party's greed at all. They had clearly only become familiar with each other in the past 2 days. It wasn't that he was gullible or anything. The most fundamental reason was that he was rich. If it were Jiang Wang, he would definitely do it himself and not even leave a piece of paper for others, let alone any chance of greed. He left the things behind and walked towards Jiang Wang in a relaxed manner. His smiling eyes were gentle. How was it? How many primordial stones did you spend on this long trip? Only then did Jiang Wang remember that Goda. Oh no, Brother Yen Xian had promised to be responsible for all the expenses of his trip abroad. Don't worry. He greeted this brother with his brightest smile. I haven't gone back yet, have I? There might still be expenses in Xingyue Plain after this. Someone as quick-witted as Jiang Qingyang naturally couldn't suffer losses in these few days. Everyone laughed. Chung Gongxing waved at Lin Xian again and said to Jiang Wang, "Let me introduce you to someone." Jiang Wang had long noticed that in addition to a few friends, there were also a few particularly enthusiastic gazes on him. One was the deputy general who was helping Brother Yen pack up his things. He didn't know who he was. The other one was Lin Xian. He looked over with a smile on his face. "I'm your deputy general," Lin Xian said somewhat embarrassedly. Jiang Wang was a bit confused, but still smiled warmly. "It feels good to meet again. I don't know much about the war situation, so I hope you'll be more patient with me in the next few days." No. Lin Xian waved his hand. "I'll stay by your side and learn. Our front army is divided into 10 battalions. You have the position of commander of a battalion. Because you hadn't come to the battlefield yet, I let Lin Xian take over for you first," Chung Gongxing explained. "You two should be familiar with each other?" Jiang Wang didn't know that Lin Xian had witnessed his legendary battle. He smiled. "I have a deep impression of Brother Lin," Lin Xian hurriedly said. "How could I bear a thought from Qin Yangzi?" At this moment, Gao Zhi walked over with a smile on his face. He greeted, "Brother Jiang, long time no see." Jiang Wang also smiled and nodded. "Brother Gao." Chung Gongxing reached out and pulled him back, stopping him from being as polite as usual. But at least he gave him some face. He didn't directly say something like, "Don't bother with cats and dogs." Gao Zhi nodded with a stiff expression. He didn't say anything else and turned to leave. Jiang Wang cast a questioning look at Chung Gongxing. Chung Gongxing only said, "Let's talk when we get back to camp." Including Bao Buozhao, Chao Yu. Whether they knew him or not, almost all of them took the initiative to greet Jiang Wang. Even Xie Bao Shu said with a straight face, "Welcome to the formation." Even Lei Zhanqian said something like, "The 11th prince asked me to pass on his greetings." Even Wang Yiwu raised his chin and said, "I look forward to more of your performance." Jiang Wang wasn't used to these situations, but he still responded politely one by one. He was never arrogant to anyone. He had always been a proud person and a humble person. This was the case when he was at his lowest point, and it was the same when he was at his peak. Lin Jie, who had finally gathered the Ink Warriors, caught up with the team. After handing the things in his hand to Yen Fu, he quickly jumped in front of Jiang Wang with a smile. "Lord Jiang, I've heard a lot about you. Seeing you today, your elegance is even greater than the legends. I'm Lin Jie from the Yi Kingdom. You can call me Xiao Lin or Xiao Jie." "Brother Lin, hello." Jiang Wang was escorted all the way to the camp where the army was stationed. Later, there was a record of the army. When the 3 armies heard of Jiang Qingyang's arrival, they all rushed to see him. Everyone was anxious. Chapter 1351. After a long talk in the military tent that night, Jiang Wang finally knew why Chung Gongxing and Gao Zhi had to give up their seat. He actually had no feelings towards Gao Zhi. When they were still playing together, they didn't get along very well. Some basic things couldn't be hidden, such as Gao Zhi's jealousy towards Yen Fu, but later on, this jealousy probably transferred to Jiang Wang. Since Zhong Xianxing had made his decision, he would deal with it as such. If he had to give up his seat, then so be it. Not to mention that Chung Gongxing's grasp of Qi's political environment and understanding of people's hearts were far above his. Following Brother Xing's decision, he rarely made the wrong choice. Some people always thought that only being good with money was considered a social skill, but they didn't know that temper was also a very important factor in social interactions. Who to be angry at, under what circumstances, and how to be angry were all important. Chung Gungsheng also just found out that Jiang Wang didn't receive his notice, but coincidentally ran into Xingyue Plain and caught up with the battle. He couldn't help but twitch his mouth. I thought you purposely exorcised demons to make a name for yourself, but thinking about it, you don't seem like the kind of person who would think of such a thing. Sure enough, it's just a coincidence. Jiang Wang glanced at him with a dangerous look in his eyes. You don't seem to respect the number one inner house in history. Hey! Zhong Xianxing patted his arm affectionately and said, I was praising you for being honest, modest, and reserved. You can't do such a showy thing. 14th Prince was beside them, so Jiang Wang didn't make a fuss about it. He just smiled. Is that so? I think you're quite honest and kind too. Of course. Chung Gungsheng boasted shamelessly. Otherwise, how can we be as close as real brothers? This is called birds of a feather flock together. The honest one and the honest one find each other's eyes. Jiang Wang wanted to say that it wasn't easy to find each other's eyes. But after thinking about it for such a long time, it was better to retain some warmth. Following that, he praised, Who doesn't know that Chongxian Gongzi's righteousness is as high as the clouds? Chung Gungxing grinned and said, Keep a low profile, keep a low profile. I don't like to show off. Unlike those long-faced ones who love to wear white. By the way, Brother Chuanpu, Jiang Wang looked at him with a faint smile. I heard that someone compensated me for the peerless heaven-grade talisman I placed in my fief? Most people would have subconsciously asked, Who did you hear that from? They couldn't wait to find the informant and expose themselves completely. But who was Chongxian Fat? He slapped his forehead in a very natural manner. Look at my memory! If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten. Yes, there was an accident with your amulet. I helped you get the compensation back. After that, he solemnly took out a piece of money and put it in Jiang Wang's hand. Jiang Wang looked at the money in his hand, then looked at Chung Gungsheng, and then looked at the money. What's wrong? Chung Gungsheng asked with a confused look. Didn't you buy it with a piece of money? Jiang Wang didn't know what to say for a moment. He simply played to his strengths and circumvented his weaknesses. He looked at Jiang Shihu politely. Miss Jiang Shihu, tonight is a beautiful night. Why don't you go out and admire the moon? Jiang Shihu didn't manage to admire the moon in the end. Because they were in Xingyue Plain at this time and there was still a big battle tomorrow, almost everyone in Tianjiao was seizing the time to familiarize themselves with the army, understand the battlefield, and adjust their goals. Only Chung Gungsheng was generous enough to chat with Jiang Wang for half the night. After coming out of Chung Gungsheng's military tent, Jiang Wang went to find his 10th battalion. Most of the soldiers in the camp were ordinary people. They only knew some simple military martial arts. Except for the night watch team, most of them were already asleep. Lin Xian took 2 people and patrolled the camp dutifully. When Jiang Wang came to the camp, he was chatting with a soldier on night watch. Usually, he cared about the soldiers under his command. Only in times of war could he get the soldiers to risk their lives. This was probably a quality that a famous general must have. In this aspect, Lin Xian did a good job. Seeing Jiang Wang from afar, he hurried over and greeted him respectfully, Sir Jiang. By now, Jiang Wang already knew that Lin Xian was watching when he was fighting the 4 demonic humans alone. He also knew how Lin Xian defended him in front of everyone, saying things like, I'm willing to be your lackey. It was as if he was his fanatical follower. Jiang Wang couldn't help but feel a little strange. General Lin, you've worked hard. I chatted with Chung Xian for too long and wasted some time. I'm sorry that you have to suffer alone here. It's my duty. I don't find it hard. Lin Xian's attitude was very humble. Do you have time now? I'd like to report the situation of our camp to you. I was just about to ask General Lin. Jiang Wang said, let's talk in the camp. After entering the main tent, both sides took their seat. Without wasting any time, Lin Xian immediately said, there are 5,000 people in our camp. They're all good men full of vigor. They're enough to support an ordinary vigor battle formation. The camp is divided into 5 teams, each of 1,000 people. The leaders of the 5 teams are all in the reaching heaven state. For ordinary people, there was an innate difference between men and women in terms of physical strength. Generally speaking, men's vigor was stronger. The battle formation of the military used the vigor of a person's vigor to allow ordinary people to display extraordinary combat strength. The strength of the masses can surpass the extraordinary. Therefore, most of the ordinary soldiers in the armies of the various countries were men. After reaching the transcendent state, the innate difference in physical strength was erased. The only thing that determined the strength of a person's combat strength was their own cultivation. Correspondingly, in the army, there were all kinds of officers with transcendent state cultivation, regardless of gender. Both men and women were very common. After listening to Lin Xian's introduction, Jiang Wang had a general understanding of the 10th camp that he was in charge of. There were 50 transcendent state cultivators in total, which meant that there was 1 transcendent state cultivator in every 100 soldiers. To the Sioux country, this was indeed the main force of the army. These transcendent state cultivators were the core that connected the various blood qi battle formations. The other ordinary soldiers were the foundation of the various blood qi battle formations. If an army was made up entirely of transcendent state cultivators, they could naturally use all kinds of true energy battle formations. Of course, it didn't mean that true energy battle formations were necessarily stronger than blood qi battle formations. It was just that transcendent state cultivators had more choices. I have a general understanding now. Jiang Wang praised. General Lin, you've sorted it out very clearly. Are you from a family of generals? I've learned a bit about the art of war. Lin Xian shook his head and said, I've made a fool of myself. Although he didn't show much, it was more than just learning a bit. Ronggua had truly nurtured Lin Xian as a future pillar, not just a fighter with amazing talent. Jiang Wang thought for a moment and said, I heard that you were there when I was fighting with the 10,000 fiends and the others in the soul-breaking gorge? Yes, I hid in the formation with the Wu Tai divine art. Lin Xian said with a bit of shame, I was fortunate enough to witness Lord Zhang's legendary battle. Actually, I have a question. Jiang Wang looked at him with a smile. At that time, I was very weak. Since you were watching from the side, why didn't you sneak attack me? Lin Xian was silent for a moment. He pursed his lips and said, To be honest, such a thought flashed through my mind. You were the Tianjiao of Qi. You were like a mountain that pressed down on me, making it hard for me to breathe. I did think of moving you away. But there were 2 factors that influenced my choice. First, when you first entered the soul-breaking gorge, you could have easily killed me, but you only told me to keep it a secret. Other than that, you didn't do anything else. The scene at that time always jumped into my mind. Second, I was afraid of you. Even when you were in that state, I still felt that you were undefeatable. He knelt down and put his hands on his knees to show a kind of obedience. He confessed honestly, To be honest, I don't know if I respected you more or feared you more. In short, I hesitated for a long time and couldn't pull out my sword at that time. I could only choose to leave quietly. After saying these words, Lin Xian bowed to Jiang Wang and said, This is the feeling of a weak person like me. If Lord Jiang doesn't mind, please expel me from the camp now. I can understand that. Jiang Wang laughed involuntarily. General Lin, you worry too much? A gentleman talks about his actions, not his heart. When it comes to the heart, there is no perfect person in the world. When I met you in the soul-breaking gorge, How could I not have thought of killing you to keep your mouth shut? He said honestly. There was also a voice in my heart that told me, perhaps killing this person is the best way to keep it a secret. But at the same time, I would ask myself, what crime did this person commit? Was there any reason why I had to kill him? Although we belonged to two different countries, we didn't meet on the battlefield and have no grudges against each other. I think this person must have shouldered the hopes of many people and must have been missed by many people. If he died, many people would be sad. If I killed him for no reason just because I was stronger than him, then what was the difference between me and the demonic man? After asking myself this, I had no intention of killing him. A wise man once said, "A single heart has 1,000 thoughts." I think people's evil thoughts and good thoughts are constantly generated, flashing by. Whether it's good thoughts or evil thoughts, they can't determine what kind of person we are. What determines the foundation of our life is the choice we make. In the end, people are determined by their choices. What you think doesn't matter. What you choose, you are what you are. Lin Xian looked seriously at Jiang Wang. This time, he bowed deeply. Listening to your words is better than studying for 10 years. Lin Xian has learned. Jiang Wang hurriedly grabbed his arm and helped him up. We're all of the same age and we're just discussing life. I don't deserve such a great gift from you. Lin Xian couldn't continue bowing. He could only straighten up and exclaim, I think I know how you became the #1 inner palace master in history. On the long road of cultivation, the inner palace level is only a small hill. Even the #1 in history couldn't withstand a single blow from God's arrival. Today, under that sword, I was as weak as an ant. Jiang Wang shook his head. Don't flatter me anymore. We're all people who just started our journey. We have to work hard and look further. Lin Xian said sincerely. Lin Xian will not forget Jiang Wang's kind words today. I only hope to work hard for the rest of my life, and be able to catch up to Jiang Wang. Jiang Wang really wasn't an arrogant person. Other than purposely angering others or fighting for power in battle, he usually only praised in front of his sister. He was not used to Lin Xian's incessant fanatical flattery. He was even a little embarrassed. He quickly changed the topic. In this battle of Xingyue Plain, the opponent can't be underestimated, Lin Xian said confidently. I believe that under your leadership, we will be able to achieve victory. Jiang Wang said, What I want to say is, you can be the commander and I'll be your assistant. Lin Xian was shocked and quickly moved away. Does Lord Jiang have any dissatisfaction with me? No. Jiang Wang supported him and said seriously, It's the opposite. I admired you a lot when we were at the Riverview platform. Please don't overthink it. I'm sincerely mentioning this to you. I have to be honest. I don't know anything about the art of war. I really don't know how to lead an army into battle. I should be brave enough to kill the enemy, but I don't have the strength to lead an army. What face do I have to be the commander? If it was a normal battle, then so be it. This time, our opponent is Jing, the strongest in the world. How can we look down on them? I'm asking you to be the commander for the sake of the victory of the battle. He had this plan a long time ago. He only made this decision after getting to know Lin Xian better. It wasn't a hypocritical test, but a sincere offer. Lin Xian looked at him for a while. After confirming that he wasn't pretending, he sighed. Your state makes me feel like I'm looking up to a mountain. But I can't agree, he said. Why? Jiang Wang asked. There are 3 things you can't do. Lin Xian said seriously. The general is the courage of the army. The world knows you, but I'm unknown. If you are the general, the army will flee. If I am the general, the people will panic. This is a loss of courage. This is not a choice. In this chaotic battlefield, it's easy to die alone. Our army is divided into 10 battalions. The commanders of the 9 battalions are all present. If you are the main general, everyone will help you. If I am the main general, everyone will avoid me. This is a loss of power. This is not a choice. As the saying goes, if one's virtue is not worthy of the position, there will be disaster. I'm not as virtuous as you, I'm not as strong as you, I'm not as good as you. How can I be above you? This is a loss of virtue. This is not a choice. When he finished, he said sincerely, "Please don't think of it this way." After hearing this, Jiang Wang still didn't think that he had the ability to lead an army, but he was convinced by Lin Xian. Especially the loss of power theory, he could completely foresee it. Cheng Gongsheng and the others would definitely help him with everything they had. But who was Lin Xian? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. But I've never read any books on the art of war, and I've rarely been in battle. I'm afraid I'll harm the lives of my men. If you trust me, I'll take charge of the army. Lin Xian said, "You'll be the flag and I'll be the wings. If there's anything you want me to do, I'll lead the army straight to it." Since he had put it this way, Jiang Wang didn't have any more room to refuse. He only said, "Then let's discuss it. Whether we can fight or not and how to fight you'll have to worry. I'm willing to be the vanguard of the army. Whoever you want me to kill, I'll kill." Overall, the two sides reached an agreement. Jiang Wang would still be the main general, and he would be the flag of the 10th camp. Lin Xian would be in charge of the army, and he would be the core of the 10th camp. The two of them chatted happily. The more they talked, the more they felt that the other was trustworthy. Then, they discussed the many situations on the battlefield and came up with a few contingency plans. It wasn't until the night patrolling soldiers passed by the tent again that the two of them realized that a long time had passed. "I'll take my leave first." Lin Xian stood up. This time, Jiang Wang wasn't as polite with him. He only smiled and said, "Then I won't see you out." Lin Xian smiled and said, "Don't see me out, don't see me out." He left the tent and walked out. Before he left, he suddenly turned around and bowed deeply to Jiang Wang. "No matter the outcome of this battle, it's Lin Xian's honor to be able to work with you and be fellow soldiers." Then, without waiting for Jiang Wang's response, he turned around and left. The moon and stars outside the curtain were very low, as if they could be reached out and touched. Chapter 1352. Chun Nation, Valley of No Return. It was foggy all year round, day and night. There were endless rumors of ghosts. The interior of the valley was quiet and peaceful, especially tonight when the moon was bright and the stars were sparse. The wooden house was in front of a clear stream, and a sense of tranquility flowed quietly. Woof, woof, woof! The old yellow dog suddenly barked. The barking disturbed the night, and ripples appeared in the clear stream. The shadow of the moon shattered the reflection of the water. The valley woke up. A folding stool was placed in front of the wooden house, and a white-haired old man was napping on the folding stool. "What's the noise about?" he muttered unhappily without opening his eyes. "Boss, it's me." A young man with long hair and red eyes broke through the light night and walked quickly to the old man. "Woof, woof, woof!" The old yellow dog lying in the corner of the house barked a few more times at him, looking very fierce. It was a pity that his old and weary appearance did not have much of a deterrent effect. It only bullied this newcomer because he did not dare to talk back to it. The old man sitting on the folding stool opened his eyes and looked. "Oh, little snake." Fong Helling was already used to it. He said calmly, "I'm Little Crane." Little Crane. The old man stood up and leaned in front of him. He mumbled, "There's a woman in my house. Do you know who she is? She's lying on my bed. I can't sleep." "It's Lord Mask," Fong Helling replied. "Oh." The old man pondered for a while. "Who?" Fong Helling thought for a while, and covered his face with his left hand. "It's Lord Swallow." "Swallow?" The old man murmured, "Yen. I'm Yen Chunwei. Yen Chunwei is me. Jiang Mingxiong." He suddenly turned his body and looked to the east. The turbidity in his old eyes was suddenly washed away, like a clear stream washing the moon. A layer of clear light surged in his eyes, and it was extremely sharp. The clear stream in front of the wooden house seemed to have frozen. The old yellow dog immediately tucked its tail between its legs. There was no wind, and there seemed to be no stars or moon. Fong Helling lowered his eyes and stood motionless. "How was your trip this time?" The old man had completely changed his tone. Although his voice was still old, there was a hint of indifference in it. "I've done everything you asked me to do," Fong Helling said. The old man took out a yellowed ancient book from his bosom and handed it to him. "This is the sword manual you wanted. It's a ferocious sword that could no longer be tolerated in the world during the era of flying swords." Fong Helling took it silently. He didn't thank him because there was no need to. Here at the head of the humanoid demons, giving and receiving were always equal. And this was what he deserved. "You can think about it now," said the old man. "This is my choice," Fong Helling said. "Please rest early." He bowed to the old man and turned to leave. He walked with certainty. This was an era of Tianjiao. He couldn't walk fast, so he could only walk like this. Woof woof woof. After a period of peace, the old yellow dog felt that it could do it again, so it barked at Fong Helling's back majestically. The old man glanced at it. It immediately shut up and wagged its tail in a fawning manner. "Stupid dog, you can't even crush a persimmon." The old man shook his head and walked into the wooden house. The old yellow dog wagged its tail and followed him in, very submissive. After he entered the wooden house, the old yellow dog immediately tilted its head and spat. "Bah! It actually spoke human language. Is there a good person in this broken valley of yours? Where am I supposed to find a soft persimmon?" It angrily cursed a few times, then crouched down and narrowed its eyes. The structure of the wooden house was very simple. There was only a kitchen, a living room, and a bedroom. After entering, it was the living room. On the left was the kitchen, and on the right was the bedroom. There was a square table on the ceiling of the living room, with 3 benches around it. There were a few dishes on the table, covered with a bamboo cover to protect them from insects and flies. Looking up, there was a black wooden shrine hanging on the wall. There was an incense burner, burning incense, and even half a burner of incense ash, but there was no god statue. There wasn't even a portrait of a god. It was unknown what they were worshipping. Apart from that, the living room was empty. Yan Chunhui turned right and walked into the bedroom. This bedroom still maintained a simple overall style. The bed was a very simple and narrow single bamboo bed, leaning against the wall alone. There wasn't even a curtain, let alone any other decorations. The only thing that was somewhat incompatible with the style of the entire house was, there was an extremely gorgeous stringed zither by the window of the bedroom. From the carvings to the luster of the strings, everything was telling the word precious. Only with extreme care and ingenuity could such a treasure be created. And it was quietly placed there, waiting for a pair of hands to touch it. The wooden window was closed, and it should have been closed for a long time. So this zither should have been lonely for a long time, even if it was shiny and new. Yan Chunhui's gaze fell on the bamboo bed. At this time, there was a person lying on the bed, if it could still be called a person. She had the shape of a human head, facial features, but not completely human limbs. The position of the left hand was probably a claw. The position of the right hand was like an elephant leg. The torso seemed to be pieced together by some different animals. Some had hair, some had thorns. Not only was it uneven, but the colors were also different. It should be the position of the legs, but it was more uniform. It was a pair of colorful snake tails. And the person, lying on the bed, had her eyes tightly closed. Her face was bloody. Yan Chunhui walked forward and looked carefully. His wrinkled eyelids lifted slightly. Then, the sound of the sword rang. The person on the bed immediately opened her eyes. She looked at the white-haired Yen Chunwei and was in a daze for a moment. However, the absent-mindedness that came suddenly was quickly shattered. The number one handsome man in the state of Chun back then was now just a forgetful old man. And she didn't dare to move her eyes, but after she gradually woke up, she revealed extreme fear. I died. And then you saved me? She asked in a trembling voice. Yen Chunwei nodded. Her terrifying guess was confirmed. Tears flowed out at once, and she almost lost control. She shouted, Yen Chunwei, why did you save me? Why did you save me? You bastard! You damned! Who allowed you to use such dirty means to save me? Yen Chunwei looked at her quietly and didn't say a word. She cursed on the bamboo bed for a while, and finally seemed to have lost her strength. She sobbed and cried, I should have died long ago. I should have died 300 years ago. Why did you? Why did you? Don't cry, Yen Chunwei replied. His comfort was weak and muddy. It was like 2 drops of dirty water squeezed out by wringing a rag. It seemed to have finally completed something, but when it fell, it dirted the place again. Only Yen Zi's eyeballs could move, but the afterimage she saw was enough to prove her conjecture, and she knew what she looked like. Woo-woo, she cried in a very unpleasant way. Chapter 1353. Don't cry. The old man standing in front of the bamboo bed comforted her again. Seeing that it was indeed useless, he said slowly, after you absorb their life force, I'll help you deal with it. Then, you'll be able to recover. Wait. You only know how to wait. The swallow on the bamboo bed shouted angrily. I don't want to wait, not even for a moment. Kill me. Yen Chunwei looked at her and said, You know I won't do that. His voice could be said to be gentle, but compared to the pain of the swallow, it could not help but be a little cruel. You bastard! Yen, hurry up and kill me! Kill me! The swallow cried and shouted. Her voice was getting hoarse. I don't want to. I don't want to live like this. Not even for a moment. I don't want to. The more painful it was, the more powerless it was. But Yen Chunwei's eyes quietly became cloudy again. He seemed to be in a daze. I feel like I've forgotten something. He thought quietly for a while, but it was to no avail. He sighed with a hunched back. Forget it. What couldn't be forgotten in this world? Who couldn't be forgotten in this world? Forget it. Little snake, I've been out of the valley for 3 months. He frowned and said, I don't know if you've completed your task? It was as if the swallow's cries had only reached his ears at this moment. He moved forward and squinted at the woman on the bamboo bed. He was a little surprised. Swallow, how did you get hurt so badly? The swallow, who had been crying and screaming, suddenly fell silent. Her eyes were still crying, but she didn't make a sound. The pain seemed to be swallowed in her heart. He almost forgot everything in the world, but he still remembered this name. Jiang Wang sat alone in the military tent, quietly adjusting his breath. He seized every moment to cultivate, not letting it slip away at his fingertips. Objectively speaking, even with his current strength, there was still a lot of room for him to explore in the inner mansion stage. For example, in terms of soul-killing techniques, defensive spells, illusions, medical spells, but no matter which aspect he tried to fill in, it couldn't bring about a qualitative improvement. Because he was already the strongest in the inner mansion. Not only was he the number 1 in the inner house, but he was also the number 1 in the history of the Qing dynasty. In terms of combat strength, he had already reached a certain limit on the path of the inner palace. His current cultivation was more about examining himself, finding out what he lacked, and making the final improvements. If you want to build the highest tower, you must build the most solid foundation. Invincibility at the level of the inner mansion had already happened. Jiang Wang was not satisfied with this. He had always looked further. The fiery bone lotus absorbed the omnipresent star energy. This time, they came to Xingyue Plain to participate in the battle between the Qi and Jing forces, and Jiang Mingxiong and Yu Ke, two perfected cultivators, were obviously nearby. Therefore, he had no intention of contacting Master Guan Yin. He just cultivated silently. After attaining the Heaven's Sanctum, he had a clearer understanding of astral power. After the establishment of the Starlight Sacred Tower, starlight tempering was a necessary step, and the advantage of a heavenly abode cultivator was that the 5 prefectures' glory also had the body tempering step. The strengthening effect of the 5 divine ability lights on the body was obvious. The reason why Jiang Wang could still fight with a broken heart and a broken leg was because of the 5 prefectures' glory tempering when he attained the Heaven's Sanctum. The light of the divine ability communicated with every muscle and dizzied it, bringing a stronger defense, more strength, and faster speed. After undergoing the 5 prefectures' glory tempering, Jiang Wang's body was as strong as those military cultivators who were proficient in body tempering. For example, Zhong Xianzun, whose body was already extremely strong, after experiencing the 5 prefectures' simultaneous glory and the starlight body tempering, once he activated the divine palace state, he could even suppress Na Liang, who had a body that was close to a god. Of course, Jiang Wang's current body was not as strong as Yonggenzuan's. After all, Chongshuan's divine ability was too suitable for body tempering, and Zhang Genjia's development of this divine ability had almost reached the peak. Perhaps it was because of the uniqueness of the fiery bone lotus that Jiang Wang had noticed a long time ago that the omnipresent star power was not the same. Star power that originated from different stars had extremely minute differences. Although this did not affect the fiery bone lotus use of them, such differences still existed. These differences were like some kind of attribute, some kind of mark, like the different identities between people. Until now, the purest star power he had come into contact with was the feedback he obtained from killing the star beasts in the Wuji catacombs on the floating continent. Apart from that, all other star powers carried different marks. For example, Eliotha's star power was obviously more unpredictable than other star powers. Thinking about it from this angle, when the endless starlight met in the vast universe, would they also greet each other? I am Alioth. I am Ziwei. Long time no see, Yinghua. With so many thoughts in one's mind, random thoughts were unavoidable during cultivation. Jiang Wang naturally severed them so that he could focus more on cultivation. Suddenly, a voice rang in his ears. Young friend Jiang. Senior Guan Yin? Jiang Wang withdrew from his cultivation state, somewhat surprised. He had never imagined that Master Guan Yin would transmit his voice to Star Moon Plains under such circumstances. Yu Ke and Jiang Mingxiong were the only ones paying attention to this place. In a state of war, transmission between stars and moons was cut off. If even the great illusionary realm could not be communicated, it would be much more difficult to transmit a voice from the forest ocean origin world. What was it that would make Master Guan Yin transmit his voice at such a time? Young friend, I have a request. Guan Yan's voice transmitted from Eliotha's star power. Although there was no emotion transmitted, the matter had to be extremely urgent for Master Guan Yin to break through the seal and transmit his voice from the distant forest ocean realm. He had always been calm when facing the terrifying experts of Pingdeng, but tonight, he had directly asked for Jiang Wang's help without even exchanging pleasantries. Jiang Wang had no time to think. He immediately said solemnly, "What do you need me to do? Please tell me." "Come to the forest ocean origin world. There are some matters here that require your help," Guan Yin said. "I'll go right away," Jiang Wang said. After a pause, he said, "How do I get there?" "Go to 7 Stars Valley first. I'll receive you there." The last time he had gone to the forest ocean origin world, He had passed through the Seven Stars Tower's secret realm in Seven Stars Valley. Jiang Wang was no stranger to that place. He only asked, "How do I notify you after I arrive at Seven Stars Valley?" "I'll know when you arrive at Seven Stars Valley." Jiang Wang did not hesitate in the slightest. "All right, I'll set off right away." After waiting for a while, Aliotha's star power did not transmit any more messages. Master Guan Yin did not even say goodbye. The matter might be more urgent than he had imagined. What had happened in the Forest Ocean Origin world? Jiang Wang gripped his sword and walked out under the night sky. Chapter 1354. The significance of this battle in Xingyue Plain is more important than you think. If you succeed in this battle, it might affect your future for the next 10 years. Especially now that you're leaving, you'll lose more than you think. Do you have to leave? Cheng Gongxing looked serious as he stared at Jiang Wang. "I have to leave," Jiang Wang said. "Of course, honor and disgrace are important. But to me, there are some things that are more important. I just came to tell you about it. Swords have no eyes on the battlefield. After I leave, take care of yourself." "Get out of here," Cheng Gongxing waved his hand. "I can't live without you." "What do you mean?" "I'm a descendant of a general." Jiang Wang said, "Help me pass the message to Long Chuan and Yin Fu. And Lin Xian too. He'll be in charge of that camp. He's good at managing soldiers, and he's reliable. He won't be a burden to you." Cheng Gongxing was obviously reluctant, but he still pinched his nose and said, Okay, I'll remember." Jiang Wang didn't waste any more words with him. He turned and left the tent. The sprawling military tents were neat and orderly under the starlight. In the darkness of the night, the brilliant torches swayed as far as the eye could see. Could it be that, from somewhere in the vault of heaven, this place was also like looking at the stars? There were too many fanciful thoughts in life. Not all questions needed answers. Jiang Wang held his breath and quietly slipped into a military tent. "Who is it?" Tian Chang, who couldn't take charge of a camp and was assigned to Chao Yu, stood up with his saber. The flashing cold light showed that this was a good saber, but it was far from being comparable to Chao Xan. "It's me." Jiang Wang walked into his field of vision and transmitted his voice. Tian Chang sheathed his saber and transmitted his voice back calmly. "It's noisy in the army. It's not a wise choice for you to come to see me at this time. It's precisely because the evil energy is gathered in the army that people's souls are frightened. It's not easy for people to spy on us," Jiang Wang said. "Even so, in our situation, we should be more careful. Give me a defensive map of the Seven Stars Valley." Jiang Wang didn't want to waste time with him, and went straight to the point. "I came to Xingyue Plain to participate in the battle. Why would I bring this?" Tian Chang subconsciously refused. He then asked, "What do you want this for?" "I believe you have a way." Jiang Wang glanced at him indifferently. "You have to know that my time is tight." This calm gaze caused Tian Chang's heart to suddenly turn cold. It was as if he could see the scene of this person charging straight into the sea of swords during the day again. That indomitable determination, and the courage of hanging life and death by the sword, of course. There was also the terrifying strength of the inner palace that had never been seen before. He turned around and walked to the table. He spread out the paper and started sketching. "I do remember, but I don't know if there have been any changes since I came out," he said. "Just tell me what you know," Jiang Wang said. After all, the Seven Stars Valley's secret realm was the exclusive property of the Great Swamp Tian clan. Although it hadn't been long since it was last opened, the Tian clan wouldn't give up on monitoring the Seven Stars Valley. Of course, he wanted to go to the Forest Ocean Origin realm to help Grandmaster Guan Yin, but he didn't want to fall into the pit that was the Tian clan and have any disputes with them. He especially didn't want to run into that madman Tian Anping. Therefore, it was necessary to have a defensive map of the Seven Stars Valley to avoid trouble with the Tian clan and sneak in. Tian Chong was an extremely well-hidden character. He had lived in the Tian clan for so many years, participated in the Seven Stars Valley's secret realm, and was tortured in Heartless Valley. He could even represent the Tian clan in handling affairs and come to Xingyue Plain to participate in the battle. Jiang Wang believed that he would be able to provide him with the correct information. On the other hand, if he couldn't even do this, how could he, Tian Chong, try to break free from Tian Anping? It didn't take long for the defensive map to be drawn. It was an extremely detailed map. It clearly outlined the details of the Great Swamp Tian clan's defense in the Seven Stars Valley. Not only were there key positions and hidden sentry points, but there was also a rough description of the cultivation base of the guards. In addition, there was also a small path in and out of the Seven Stars Valley. Even Tian Chong himself wouldn't believe that he didn't have any thoughts about the Seven Stars Valley. Just as Jiang Wang expected, the defenses of the Seven Stars Valley were indeed much more lax before the Seven Stars Pavilion's secret realm opened. "Thank you for your hard work." Jiang Wang rolled up the map and turned around. Tian Chong didn't say anything else and didn't ask any unnecessary questions. He was so curious that he was about to go crazy. He really wanted to know why Jiang Wang had left the Xingyue Plain battlefield at such a crucial time. He wanted to give up the merits that were almost at his fingertips and bear the risk of being questioned. He wanted to leave this place and sneak into the Great Swamp County's Seven Stars Valley. Could it be that some key treasure was about to appear in the Seven Stars Pavilion's secret realm? But wasn't the secret realm closed yet? He had already climbed to a certain position in the Tian clan, but he still hadn't received any news. Where did Jiang Wang get this information from? However, Tian Chong had already learned to be patient. He just took out a white towel and wiped his long saber over and over again. Enduring curiosity was more difficult than enduring pain. After getting the map of the Seven Stars Valley's defenses, Jiang Wang left the Xingyue Plain that very night. He didn't know whether Fang Yu didn't notice it or didn't care at all. Anyway, he didn't encounter any obstacles when he left the Xingyue Plain. Jiang Wang's military god, Jiang Mengxiong, didn't make any movements either. It made sense. Even the military god, who was at the peak of Master Transcendent, wouldn't pay attention to the movements in the Xingyue Plain all the time. Xiang and Su Kingdom almost sent out all their forces and deployed nearly 1,000,000 troops in the entire Xingyue Plain. As the military god of Deqi, he wouldn't do nothing but monitor everyone in the army. Leaving the Xingyue Plain behind, Jiang Wang identified the direction and flew all the way without stopping. To be honest, it was not a wise choice to leave the Xingyue Plain battlefield rashly. As the commander of a battalion, he left alone on the eve of the war. It was not wrong to charge him as a deserter. Cheng Gongxing helped to get the position of the commander of a battalion. After a discussion, the Tianjiao tacitly left it to him. He offended too many people by leaving just like that. Cheng Gongxing and his friends might understand, but it was hard for others not to care. But from another point of view, before the war began, he was still in the state of missing for the country. He had clearly refused to participate in the Battle of the Xingyue Plain and had not been recruited. He broke into the Xingyue Plain battlefield to hunt down the Devilman. Hunting down the Devilman was not only to punish evil and promote good, but also to clear his name, to slap the Jing Kingdom's Mirror World stage, and to win the righteous name for Qi. It was under such circumstances that he stayed in the Xingyue Plain for half a night. From this point of view, he had never really participated in the war, military discussions, or a battle. Perhaps he wouldn't be charged with desertion. But one thing was for sure. This would definitely make him lose a lot of points in the military hall. If he wanted to enter the military hall in the future, he was afraid that he would have to pay 10 times more to make up for today's choice. Therefore, Chung Gungxing said that he would lose more than he imagined by making such a decision. Jiang Wang didn't think of these problems. Of course, he also knew that if Master Guan Yen took the initiative to ask for help, the danger would not be small. He might not be able to guarantee his safety if he rashly broke in. Even the matter of breaking into the Seven Stars Valley of the Days County was already troublesome enough. He had a deep impression of how tyrannical the Tian family of the Days County was and how terrifying Tian Anping was. But once on the Xingyue plain, Master Guanyin said, "Maybe one day I will have to ask you for help." And Jiang Wang's answer at that time was, "If you have a request, I will not refuse." This was his promise. It had nothing to do with other things. He promised so he did it. Chapter 1355. To the east of Su country was Qi. In order to reduce the possibility of a direct confrontation with the Tian family, Jiang Wang had to hide again. He changed the style of the Rui fairy robe and put on a cloak. After knowing that Yu Beidu helped him speak at Tianxing Cliff and got the recognition of Sanqing Palace, Jiang Wang had imagined the scene of him returning to Qi. He didn't expect that even though Qi had returned, he still had to sneak around. However, he was worried about Master Guan Yin, so he didn't have much time to feel disappointed. Since he had to sneak around, he couldn't fly around recklessly in Qi. In a situation where one couldn't reveal one's identity, flying around in the territory of an overlord was an extremely dangerous thing to do. It was very likely that he would be shot down in the blink of an eye. During the day, Jiang Wang mingled with different caravans and rode horses. At night, he traveled alone. Day and night without stopping, he traveled at the fastest speed without revealing his identity. From the moment he stepped into Qi to the Great Lake County, it only took him 3 days. Great Lake County was located in the north of Qi. Ji City was the center of Great Lake County. Seven Stars Valley was located in the north of Ji City. Jiang Wang had been to Ji City more than once. The first time, he traveled with Li Fengyao in the carriage. The second time, he was ordered to fly straight. The third time, he was in hiding. In short, it seemed like he had returned alive. The word Ji in Ji City was like a food container. Because of this, there was a rumor in the court that the Tian family is greedy and impatient. It was unknown if it was spread by Uriel. Jiang Wang didn't care much about it. He was only thinking about how to sneak into Seven Stars Valley. The Tian family built a watchtower here and set up a formation. There was also an army stationed here. There was only one way in and out of the valley. Before the secret territory of Seven Stars Tower opened, this passage would be closed. Because the only value of this place was the secret territory. Some people might think that there was no need to guard Seven Stars Valley before the secret territory opened. In fact, this was not the case. Every place in the secret territory of Seven Stars Tower was very precious. Not everyone could fight for it. There were many people who were willing to hide in the valley and wait for the day when it was opened. Similar things had happened in history. However, with the amount of defense he had against that kind of character, he probably wouldn't be able to defend against Jiang Wang. Tian Chang drew a secluded path that went through the forest in the east. Jiang Wang went there to take a look. Although it was called a road, it was actually a beast trail. He wondered how Tian Chang found it. According to Jiang Wang's understanding of this person, he must have a lot of similar information. Even in the internal ranking of the Tian family, Tian Chang would definitely be ranked at the top among the people who knew the Tian family the best. If there was anyone who had a better observation of the Tian family than Tian Chang, the only person Jiang Wang could think of was Tian He. I wonder what Tian He is doing now. Jiang Wang thought inexplicably. This was Tian Chang's absolute confidant, yet he did not bring him to Xingyue Plain. Jiang Wang didn't plan to take the path drawn by Tianchang. He needed Tianchang's information, but he didn't trust Tianchang completely. Even if the part of this information that had been verified was basically correct. He had a flawless invisibility cloak, which was a trump card that few people knew. It was also the reason why he sneaked into the Seven Stars Valley. In the situation where he was completely clear of all the sentry points, he put on the invisibility cloak and moved a few steps, perfectly avoiding the monitoring points in the information and openly entering the Seven Stars Valley from the top of the valley. In this quiet night, everything went smoothly, except for the starlight that suddenly hit him when he fell into the valley. This starlight came from an unknown distance, connecting the sky and the earth. It shone in the long night and instantly enveloped Jiang Wang in it. The sudden arrival of this starlight outlined the outline of Jiang Wang's body, which made the invisibility cloak unable to adjust quickly. It took 2 full breaths to hide Jiang Wang's trace, but what was the point? Such a bright starlight, the Tian family was not blind. The whole Seven Stars Valley was boiling. Someone broke in. Hurry up and call the police. Take him down. Loud noises exploded from all directions, followed closely by a dense crowd of cultivators wielding sabers and swords. Jiang Wang was stupefied. If this starlight was not the familiar Alioth starlight with the traces of Master Guanyin, he would have turned around and run. But it seemed that he had to run now. What if Tian Shili came? What if Tian Anping came? What was Master Guanyin doing? Jiang Wang vaguely heard the sound of chains dragging on the ground. While he was in a dilemma, his body suddenly became light, and his whole body was enveloped by a gentle force, which kept rising. Jiang Wang let go of his body and rose with the force, flying to the sky at an amazing speed. At this moment, a slightly thin man with a gentle temperament suddenly appeared in Jiang Wang's vision. He came from afar, and every step he took rippled the night sky. I don't know which guest is coming. Why are you so sneaky? Are you afraid that the Tian family is not good enough? Marquis Gaochang Tian Shili. Jiang Wang did not dare to reply. He could only hope that the invisibility cloak and the cloak could effectively cover his face. As for hiding his tracks, he did not have any hope. After all, the invisibility cloak could not be hidden from the cultivators of divine descent, not to mention that he was rising at a high speed in the starlight pillar. Wait! Tian Shili opened his right hand from afar. Jiang Wang saw the night sky nearby begin to surge, quickly forming a huge pitch-black hand and grabbing toward him. The Tao essence in his body surged violently, and he was about to block it. In the endless night, at the top of the beam of starlight, there was a spot of light that suddenly enlarged, and a brilliant star tower appeared. It crossed space, and with a flash, the light of the star tower had already enveloped him. Then, before the huge pitch-black hand closed around him, he jumped lightly and broke the shackles with Jiang Wang, leaping back to the high dome. Instantly, he left Tian Shili far behind. Jiang Wang was suspended in the starlight tower's light. He had just heaved a sigh of relief when the immortal voice warned him again. There was an extremely soft shriek that was closing in at a terrifying speed. He saw in the distant sky, there was a streak of starlight like an arrow, flying toward him at an extremely fast speed. It seemed to have pierced through the night sky, leaving behind a faint mark in the night sky. The arrow-like starlight had yet to reach him. Jiang Wang already felt his heart begin to hurt. He vaguely saw a strange building in front of him, and under the skylight of that building, Tian Anping, with his hair draped over his shoulders, looked up. The starlight from afar was like an arrow, and its momentum was like an arrow piercing through the heart. It came from this building, from Tian Anping. Did he see me? Did he see me clearly? Such a question flashed across Jiang Wang's mind. That feeling of being locked on had already dissipated. He landed in the brilliant starlight tower, and suddenly found peace in its brilliant light. And in the Seven Stars Valley, people saw that the starlight tower that enveloped the mysterious person had completely disappeared in a flash. In the night sky, that beam of starlight had disappeared, and that brilliant starlight tower was also nowhere to be seen. There was only a streak of starlight that pierced through the empty night sky, like a lonely rainbow. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.